Nobody's home, right? Who said that? That was good. I like that. Good morning. Welcome to the Millbrae City Council. Roll call, please.
All council members are present.
All right. If you would all please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Tonight we have several ceremonial presentations, the first of which is a presentation from the San Mateo County Library Report, fiscal year 16, why does it say 16-17? Typo.
No, it's for last.
Last year. Okay, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor Lee, and honored council members, as well as Millbrae community members. My name is Elizabeth Carr. I am the manager of Millbrae Library since March, and I'm here to talk about the accomplishments for Millbrae Library for fiscal year 16-17, which was last year, as well as for the larger San Mateo County Library system, of which Millbrae is a part. So to give you guys a snapshot, in fiscal year 16-17, Millbrae Library had over 400,000 items circulated. Over 358,000 people visited our library here. Over 45,000 customers attended our programs. And over 800 volunteers contributed close to 5,500 volunteer hours. That's massive. You can see how responsive our community is and how important they are to ensuring that we're offering responsive programming and services here. In comparison, the larger San Mateo County Library system had 2.2 million people visit the 12 libraries that comprise the system, as well as 3.2 million items were circulated or checked out last year. Also, over 638,000 physical items are in the collection at this time. One of our goals for last year was ensuring equitable access. And what that really focused on is ensuring that we're reducing barriers to accessing the resources in the library. So one way we did that is to remove fines for youth 18 and under and adults 62 years and older. This is a permanent decision. We also started things like food for fines in the holidays in partnership with Second Harvest. Another thing we're doing that has that the community has really responded to is we're loaning laptop and Wi-Fi hotspots, as well as just standalone Wi-Fi hotspots. We have 750 Wi-Fi hotspots currently in San Mateo County Library system, and these are always checked out. And so that ensures that community, when the library is closed, they can continue to access the internet as well as anything they need off-site. In addition, Millbrae Library has a robust Chinese, Korean, Japanese, and Spanish language collection, as well as various programs in different languages. We're looking forward to expanding and continuing these in the next year, as well as ensuring as our community changes, the collection will reflect that, and we'll get new languages as needed. Material and collection enhancements were also something that we did a lot of last year. Besides the Wi-Fi hotspots, we have 6 locations that have laptop vending machines. We also loan non-traditional cool items like ukuleles, hiking backpacks, water and energy conservation toolkits, and team video making kits. So this is another way that we're trying to make sure that the community has access to creative educational things that may be non-traditional. Next year, we also have GoPros that are coming, which is pretty exciting. We enhanced our digital collections, so we added a service called Hoopla, which allows you to download music, movies, ebooks, audios, books on the go, as well as a service called Canopy for hundreds of thousands of documentaries, and a service called Odillo, which enhances our Spanish ebook collection. Our last big goal is growing a culture of learning. This is an ongoing goal that we will always have. And one way we're doing this is to focus on learning by doing. Last year, San Mateo County Libraries developed a master makerspace plan. This is for all of the libraries to eventually develop their own makerspace. Some of those will be permanent on-site locations, such as Millbrae will be, and others will have more mobile units. So we hope to be a mix to make sure that we can include all community members, including our seniors at Magnolia, who may not be able to come over and enjoy an on-site makerspace, as well as to support our schools by bringing materials over to them to use on-site. Besides our amazing regular programs, such as our 5-day-a-week story times or our STEAM tween and teen programs we have regularly, we're going to focus on life skill classes for young adults in this next year, as well as piloting some maker activities so that when we have a discussion with this community over the next year, we can make sure that they've tried out some different maker activities so that our maker space will be something they truly want and that's very relevant to them. I believe that's all I have. Are there any questions? And thank you so much.
Wow, Ms. Carr, that was amazing.
Trying to keep on time.
No, you're good. Questions from the council? Ms. Schneider?
I just wanted to say thank you. I've attended a number of the fun activities, and from etching glass to painting like Monet, and I've really enjoyed them. And kudos to Kaj for that. And also thank you. You made it really easy for Leos and other community groups to put for Second Harvest food bins in the library. I've heard they're very popular. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And we are always open to partnerships such as that. The Leos should be very proud. Their bin is full, by the way.
I will tell them.
Ms. Carr, you're doing a wonderful job.
Oh, thank you.
For those who are watching and don't know, can I still say Millbrae is the most used library in the entire system? Mm-hmm. And we are very, very proud of that. We would also like you to thank you for staying open for our presidential visit on Friday. The president of Malta was here, and we did want to show her our jewel of a library and nicely planting the Maltese children in front. She loved that. It went very well. And one of the things I do want to emphasize, which is so important within our community these days, is the library access and the ability to assist people in transitioning through jobs or seeking new employment. The services are really, it's a wonderful resource throughout the system. So if people need any assistance in improving their skills or seeking jobs, I know you guys have been doing a spectacular job on all of that.
Thank you. And the makerspace can include small business and professional support, as well as traditional things like STEAM activities for kids. So we hope to continue to support that.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you so much. Congratulations on your first year and doing a great job.
Thank you.
Now we have an important proclamation proclaiming the week of May 20th through May 26, 2018 as National Public Works Week. And we have our Deputy City Manager, Key Lim, Public Works Superintendent Craig Sentis, Park Superintendent Ken Corsetti, Wastewater Treatment Plant Superintendent Dan Mount. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Pappen, Vice Mayor Lee, and members of the City Council. I am Key Lim, Deputy City Manager, and we'd like to thank you tonight for recognizing Public Works Week. National Public Works Week is a time to celebrate the tens of thousands of men and women who provide and maintain infrastructures and services collectively known as Public Works. So May 20 to May 26 of this year is declared as the National Public Works Week. So we are representing the 57-person strong Millbrae Public Works Department. And Craig Santos here, he's the superintendent, Ken Cassetti, and of course, Dan Mount. And we also like to invite you to come to our picnic on May 20th at 12:30 at Central Park, Wednesday, to celebrate National Public Works Week. And thank you very much.
Hold on.
Wednesday?
Can I ask a question, Madam Mayor? Yes. Okay, thank you. Guys, thank you for all you guys do. You know, I mean, people don't understand how much we rely on Public Works, and they're just the sight unseen, and people just take it for granted. Our roads, our sewer, our parks. You know, they keep them groomed. And most times they keep the water pipes from, you know, they break, they immediately respond 8 times when I was mayor. So I just want to say.
In the first week that he was mayor, 8 pipes broke.
At any rate, I'm trying to get past that. So.
Let it go.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with it. I just want you to know.
Anyway, so I just, and then I think are you guys going to have another open house this year other than the picnic, or because that was really great?
Vice Mayor Lee, we have not planned one, but we can certainly discuss that further and then plan for one during that week. I think it came up before.
Yeah, we had some citizens who are requesting a tour of the public services. I mean, and you guys you guys have a really nice operation. I think the citizens see what you're doing there. Thank you.
The treatment plant?
Yeah, treatment plan and your operations. Thank you.
Now for the proclamation. Public Works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities, and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Millbrae, California. And these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of Public Works professionals, who are engineers, managers, employees from state and local government and the private sector, who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water systems, water treatment, and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our communities. And it is in the public's interest for citizens, civic leaders, and children of the city of Millbrae to gain knowledge of the maintenance and progressive interests and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And this is all the whereas I leave out, sorry. And the American Public Works Association has celebrated the annual National Public Works Week since 1960. I don't know, some people are not that old. Okay, the city desires and recognizes and enhance the prestige of public works employees, often and the unsung heroes, our society, who serve the public every day with professionalism and quiet dedication. Now, therefore, we, the members of the Millbrae City Council, do hereby proclaim May 20th through May 26th, 2018, as National Public Works Week. We hereby encourage our citizens, businesses, and civic organizations to pay tribute to our public works professionals, engineers, managers, and employees, and to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protect our health, safety, and quality of life. Gentlemen, you do a spectacular job. You make us look good. As it says here, our public health, safety, and welfare is really in your hands. We're not kidding when we say the unsung heroes, who you never really see till something goes wrong. And we are trying to ensure that nothing goes wrong. So by supporting you and the council's commitment to infrastructure improvements, we're hoping that the city is not responding, but yet just becoming sustainable. I thank you so much for your dedication to serving the city of Millbrae and all the hard work you all do, making us look good. So if we could, everybody, can you give them a round of applause? There's so many things. Anybody who went to Arbor Day or Cleanup Day and Ken's staff who pre-dug the holes so we all look like we're important and planting trees, everything, the streets, the improvements all along throughout our system and our city. You guys are just so key to that. So thank you so much. And my favorite costume at the Employee Appreciation Day at Halloween was one of the members who wore the emoji poop costume, which was very humorous. So thank you, everybody, and we greatly appreciate everything you do. Thank you so much.
Thank you. One last thing. We have bring to you tonight Public Works hat, and we want you to be proud when you wear that and walk down the streets of Millbrae.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
I'm going to wear it all the way on my brow. Here we go. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Our final presentation tonight, we have several honored guests. No, it's not impersonating a Public Works guy. No, it's okay. Unless you're trying to dig into somebody's street. Evening, Chief. Would you like to start off here? This is a presentation by San Mateo County Sheriff's Association Activities League on the golf program.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, and members of the public. It is my honor to introduce the Sheriff's Activities League and the subsequent golf program. Our director is here, Barbara Bonilla, and she's going to be speaking in a bit about the program. It's been my honor to be part of the SAL program. I was part of the board of directors. I saw firsthand the effect that it has on the community, on the youth. It's such a great program. It offers so many things to communities like Millbrae. It fits right in with the community policing model, which is the problem-solving approach that communities need and the engagement that they need, where law enforcement works together with the community. It reduces incidents of fear and violence, increases participation, and people that are able to come forward. So SAL is a huge part of that. We've seen it work in our communities, and I'd like to introduce Barbara up to tell you about the program and how it affects Millbrae.
And before Barbara starts, I'm sorry, we have an honored colleague here from the city of East Palo Alto, former mayor and council member Larry Moody. Thank you, sir.
Welcome, my friend, Mayor Pappen, but I am here as the Associate Director of Community Engagement for the Sheriff's Activities League program. And so.
Glad to have you here, sir. Thank you.
And we have a PowerPoint that isn't up.
Please. It's not up yet? Uh-oh. Who's going to assist?
We sent it in.
As we bide time on that
Okay,
front.
well, I can talk. I can. I definitely know enough. So, sure. So SAL's mission, which should be up there, is the mission of Sheriff's Activities League is to foster relationships between deputies, youth, families, and community in order to help our youth reach their full potential. Many people say, well, what does that mean? Really what it is that we're here to build the bond between cops and kids, which is more important than ever with the current climate of law enforcement in communities. And we're very happy to say that we've done a very good job of that throughout the county. And luckily, through our contract for patrol services, we were able to come to the city of Millbrae. And through that, kind of go through. Well, I won't talk about that first. I'll talk a little bit about our history. I've left everyone a book on SAL from our last event, and also an impact book on the impact we make through our programs. Yes, that's our impact book, and the other one is our kind of, we call it our tribute book, our annual report. So the Sheriff's Activities League began in 1997 under now Supervisor Don Horsley. It started off in North Fair Oaks with one program, and he brought it over to the coast, and we had a very small program at the high school. In 2007, Sheriff Monks expanded the program, and they had about two. They had a coastside program and a North Fair Oaks program. In 2009, under Sheriff Bolanos hired me as community service director or something like that, some title. And we proceeded to get some money from OJJDP through the Department of Justice, and we were able to expand up to eventually 12 sites throughout the county, including the city of Millbrae. So it should be noted that Sheriff Bolanos and Sheriff Monks, when everyone else was reducing community policing programs, they were expanding them. And they did that throughout the recession, adding 4 deputies to our unit and also all the chapters and all the SAL staff. We currently serve about 3,500 children in waivered programs. So that means kids that come to program like the golf program on a regular basis, they sign a waiver. But we do serve between 8,000 and 10,000 additional children every year through school presentations, which I know we do quite often and I know you just got a report on our past activity here, but we do them here in Millbrae. But also we do movie nights. We do play streets, which we do National Night Out here. So we count those people, and it's about another 8,000 to 10,000 kids and their families that we serve through those programs. It's okay if you can't get it up. I can keep it going. We do have some focus areas. So our main focus area is building the bond between cops and kids. Our second area is SAL Healthy Kids, where we focus on sports activities that we use as a vehicle to do nutrition training and also tutoring and other programs. So
You're doing good, by the way.
thank you. I'm trying to keep myself on track because I could just go on forever, and you guys definitely don't want that.
You're good.
So SAL in the city of Millbrae. Since 2011, we've done lunchtime soccer. We've done a mentoring programs. We've done Soccer for Success, which is an after-school soccer academy. We've done tutoring, and we've also provided a competitive soccer program. At the end of 2017, our past president, who passed away in December, decided he wanted to do a golf program. And working with your council member and your past city manager, they decided that the perfect place for us to bring it was Millbrae. We brought Larry Moody on board, and working with the Park and Rec staff, we did put together a golf program, and we're very proud of it. It came together well, and we're calling it the Pete Liebengood Junior Golf Program because Pete was our past president who came up with it. So basically, we started with a SAL instructional program, which was 9 weeks of instruction. Mr. Moody was in charge of that program, but he also got many volunteers to help. And some of the names are Dawn Shoecraft, Jill Singleton, Carol Marks. So some great golfers, and then along with First Tee, who will speak later.
We say Moody in that great golfer part. Okay.
So we used the First Tee curriculum. We got volunteer instructors. We provided free transportation. And through, luckily, a donation, and again, thank you, Councilmember Olivia, she was able to connect us with some donated golf equipment that we were then able to exchange with a recycled golf program to get all the kids at golf clubs. And we did that for 14 participants, and we provided all this free of charge. Then we collaborated with the Millbrae After School Golf League, and we were able to put all of those 14 participants into the program, and they're now currently practicing once a week and then doing their golf league once a week. And so it's been a great program. We have some hats for you. Unfortunately, because our budget is a lot less, I guess, than Public Works, our hats aren't quite as nice, but you'll get the gist of it. I almost died when I saw them pull them out. Ours don't quite stand up that way. But we were able to buy each child with a polo. She could stand up, and you'll see her polo, which has the City of Millbrae. It has the Pete logo that we did and the SAL logo. So we provided all the kids with a logo and a hat. And then the Park and Rec provided the golf league for us to participate in. So we're very excited. It's coming to an end at the end of May, and we're very excited about how the program went. And we just wanted to thank, of course, our partners, which was First Tee, Councilmember Olivier, and also Jack's Recycle Golf Clubs, which is, I think First Tee is going to talk when it's speaker time, but Jack was a high school student at Palo Alto High School who found that there was kids had a hard time getting golf clubs because they're very expensive, and he started doing golf club drives. And then his father, I found through Craigslist looking for golf clubs for our kids, and he actually was able to take the golf clubs we had donated and outfit all of our kids for free, which saved us a lot of money on the program. And I think we still have some credit going forward, but we've also found a resource where we can provide the kids clubs going forward. No worries. I think we're done. But you can see a great picture of the sheriff with some kids. You'll like that. I think we got everything. I'll just.
You did quite well.
Yeah, and you could see all of our service areas. This is probably more of it, who we usually serve. And I know a lot of people will say, Millbrae doesn't have those kids. And I have to say, I think almost every child, maybe 80% of the kids in the program are on free or reduced lunch, and they're not paying for the program. So I think every kid is at risk, no matter what their socioeconomic status is. So with that, I'll take any questions. And sorry you got to listen to me ramble. For
you
10
were
minutes.
fabulous. No, thank you. And Millbrae does have those kids. I think every community does. Councilmember Oliva was the star in starting this, so please go ahead.
I wasn't the star. I just happened to land in the board, and golf clubs came raining down on my head. But what I was hoping, Barbara, that you might explain that it's not just about the activity of golf, but the curriculum and the rules and the etiquette that goes along with it. And that was Larry's. That's what kind of really brought me, because golf is a very unique sport with a lot of rules. And you go ahead.
So I'll do my best. And First Tee is definitely the professionals in this aspect. But so all of our programs are vehicles. So anything we do, sports-wise, soccer, everything is a vehicle to deliver other things to kids. And a lot of times it's tutoring or life skills. So this program happens to also come with the First Tee curriculum, which includes all of the life skills and also the golf course etiquette, because we didn't want the kids to go out there and not know it. So they were taught that. And I think they're going to be speaking on it during their speaking session a little more. But Sal is about that. We could just do programs that build the bond between cops and kids, because that's really, we want the kids to meet all the different police officers in their community. We want them to feel comfortable and to have a positive, the police officers have a positive impact on them. But at the same time, we also want to instill life skills so that they are learning when they're with us. And a lot of times they don't receive this at home, so we're the first ones to give it to them. And it's not a matter of parents not wanting to do this. Sometimes it's cultural. Sometimes it's parents are out of the home. So there's all different reasons, but we definitely want to make sure our programs are instilling additional items, not just the activity that we're doing.
Perfect.
Anybody else? Yes, I'm sorry. Ms. Oliva, still on?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I had the pleasure with Larry to see the students from Taylor and give them their shirts and their hats, and they were so excited. And I know Larry had like a. Oh, do you have a picture? There you go. He had a full van, and transportation is an issue, but he had one little guy that was about 8 years old that was just like hunting around, watching what was going to go into the van because he wanted to go play so badly, and Larry was very nice about letting him in too. So I thought that was really cool that there was nobody that was excluded from the event. So I thank you for that. That was special.
I'm sorry.
You mentioned my favorite word besides sports, but recycling or reusing of golf clubs. Do we have a steady supply? Do we have a relationship here with Green Hills Country Club and or any of the other places where a lot of golf is played?
So this is the 17-year-old who does recycle golf gear by Jack. So what we're doing is kids clubs are hard to come by, and they're doing really well at getting them. So anything we get in, we're sending over to them, and then they're providing us with a steady stream.
Okay.
So if you have anything, it would be great to send it our way, and we'll send it over to them. And I can't say how fabulous. It's actually his father. His father has been, but it was his dream to help kids. He was a golfer, and he's at Santa Clara now.
Or shoes.
Or shoes. I'm sure we were trying to figure out the shoe thing because I know some of the chambers give shoes, so we're trying to figure that out. So, yeah, I think shoes will be next on the list if we can get enough.
Well, just last year at our Millbrae Historical Society, we had a bunch of children's golf clubs donated, and we had them at the rummage sale not knowing if anybody would buy them. So this is an important way to get the word out to the community groups that do rummage sale. I'm sure the Historical Society would be happy to pass them along. And I'm the one that normally takes everything to the thrift stores at the end, so now I know. But maybe we can check with and get it up on our own website to say that if you've got golf clubs that you'd like to donate, how to go ahead and do it.
Are being allowed to keep the golf clubs. We might come up with something like, if you don't use them in a year, please give them back, or something.
I didn't mean that. But for the public, if they've got golf clubs that they want to donate to the program.
But we are letting them keep them, so we're going to need a steady supply, especially if these kids continue in the program, or even just if they're not in the program and they continue with golf. We'll need a steady supply. So thank you. Yeah, or they grow.
They do that growing thing. Yeah. Thank you. Great program.
Vice Mayor?
It's maybe we can people drop off their clubs at the police station here? Is that okay? You think that'd be okay? Oh yeah, Greg. And now I know what to do with my golf clubs. And Mayor Moody, would you like to introduce your guests? Is that okay with your guests? Or?
Well, yeah.
You got to come up to the mic, sir, so we can get everybody on TV.
You don't have to.
Oh yeah, come on. Don't be shy.
Diana, if you would, come join your daughter. This is Melissa Wu, and this is her mom, Diana. Melissa is one of about 19 young middle school students that we serve every Monday and Wednesday. Just an observation, I mean, when she first began with us, she was very shy, right? And somewhat reluctant to participate, but certainly had a desire to play golf. And her mom helped facilitate that opportunity for her through the Millbrae Park and Recreation Department to find a place so that she can become engaged. What we've come to find, not only with Melissa, but many of the other students that are participating in the program, they now have formed a community amongst themselves. And I think Councilwoman Olivia actually had an opportunity to witness that. They are connected with one another where they initially weren't. They find that the golf community is a safe place for them. And now they're building friendships and fellowships that we anticipate that's going to carry them on through the course of their life here in Millbrae. I don't know if Melissa, you want to say anything, but I certainly would ask her mom to just say a few words, please.
It's a great program, and she been growing, develop not only the skill of the golf and then the friendships, social, everything. I very, very appreciate. Thank you.
Her mom sent me an email the other day, just yesterday actually, and said, "Do you have room in the van for Melissa? She really wants to be a part of the van," because Diana, like a lot of mothers, typically will come to Taylor to pick up their children and take them to the next activity, then circle back and head back to their place of work or a place of purpose. But now Melissa has found, once again, that community within this program, and that she certainly feels comfortable. Look forward to hearing from our partners from the First Tee program at the appropriate time, and I think you'll come to find that we really have a comprehensive program that is umbrellaed by the Sheriff's Activity Leagues, and all of the must-dos that the Sheriff's Activity League requires. Right, we are being able to initiate that here in Millbrae, and we're really excited about continuing that relationship. Okay.
Melissa, you better get used to it. You're going to have to talk on the PGA, It's like, come on. Remember where you got started, okay, when you hit the big times.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry. Councilmember Holliber?
I'm sure you know, as our city has many different ways that we can promote community events and different organizations. We have MCTV, we have a recreation guide that we send out, I think 3 times a year, and social media and all different types of things. So if there's anything you need from us to help kind of spread the word about your programs, by all means, reach out to us, and we would love to do that and help spread the word and get more people involved in SAL.
Great. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that. And thank you all for hearing my ramble this evening.
You're doing great. Thank you so much. Good. On that? Yes, sir. Oh, yeah, let's go. Come on, everybody. Let's get down there. Get your hats. Come on. Get the right one, okay?
We wear a lot of hats.
Okay, is everybody ready? Nice frame. Can you see us? See everybody's faces? 1, 2, 3. One more.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm serious, Melissa, when you're wearing that green jacket, remember where you started, okay? All right. We have one public comment on that. Dan, is it Dan? Yes. Hello, Dan. Come on up. I'm sure you have a last name. I couldn't.
My last name is Burke, B-U-R.
Thank you.
I didn't realize I was going to be on TV tonight. Hopefully everybody's watching the Warriors. And
Does anybody have a score update? We said we'd.
My name is Dan Burke. I'm the executive director of the First Tee program of San Francisco, which is one of the leading youth development organizations in our country. It's an honor to be here to speak to the City Council of Millbrae. We've done an amazing job in the community in the city and county of San Francisco over the past decade, and we're starting to spread our wings and our program down to the peninsula. And our partnership early on with Sal has been phenomenal, and to be able to, serve the young folks of Millbrae kind of as our first thing's been pretty special. But I wanted to give you a little background, as Councilwoman Oliva alluded to. People, when they think First Tee, they think golf, and actually, is that closer? When people think the First Tee, they think golf, and actually bringing more kids to the sport of golf is actually a byproduct, really, of what we do. We really want to teach them life skills, kind of utilizing the platform of golf. We're not about churning out the next Jordan Spieth or Tiger Woods. It's really about providing kids opportunities that they aren't getting in our society today to give them opportunity they deserve, whether it's in education or doing things of that. So that was the first message, is we're really about youth development and education using a sport. So that's one. Kids, the backbone of our program is what's called our 9 core values, which are values that they don't see often at home anymore or in the school workplace, which is things like honesty and integrity and things like that. And with each golf activity they participate in, they really learn a life skill associated with that. I would start from the beginning, where they learn courtesy. It's about taking off your hat, looking at somebody in the eyes, shaking their hand firmly. That's really the first lesson we teach them, to be courteous. So that's really what we do, and how we've been wildly successful in San Francisco in particular is we've really been smart with who we've partnered with, from the school district to after-school providers, things of that nature. I'll just use San Francisco Unified as an example. There's 72 elementary schools in San Francisco Unified, and if your child's in any of the 4th or 5th grades in any of those 72 elementary schools, you get First Tee as part of your PE curriculum during the school year. That's a touch of about 8,500 to 10,000 kids a year right there. And then we provide after-school programs and weekend programs, and we try to transition them into what I would describe as more deep dive into learning life skills and golf skills as we go. So that's kind of what we do, and how we get to kids is really partnering with school districts and organizations such as SAL that are in the community. So it is an honor to be here in Millbrae, because as you guys described, and I say when I'm raising money downtown San Francisco, the kids in Pacific Heights need to know honesty as much as the kids in the Sunnydale Project. So why is this all important is really the most important thing that I could share with you, is that the resources for kids are going away, especially the ones that need it the most. In our society now, 1 in 5 kids won't graduate from high school. 1 in 6 children doesn't know where their next meal is coming from. Here in California, of all the 9th graders right now, whether they're at Cappuccino, they're at Sarah, all the 9th graders in California, only 1 in 3 is going to graduate from a 4-year university with a degree. So the value of what we do in the community is getting more important by the day. So having city governments understanding the value of programs like Sal and the First Tee for your communities is critical moving forward to make sure that all those young folks in your community have the best opportunity they can. With that, I really just want to open up for any questions moving forward as we kind of come down and work closely with Sal in this community.
I think we're good. We applaud your efforts, and we do acknowledge the importance of these programs. We hope they will continue and thrive throughout our community and others. And I wish I could say, my first job was collecting stray golf balls at the Olympic Club because I used to live next door. Yeah, it's a good sport, especially when people are bad. So the golfers.
I'm not quite comfortable enough to be in front of you yet on the budgetary process, nor am I going to ask for any of the public works money at this point. But just
we have an agenda.
It's comforting to know
later
that you guys understand the value of giving back into the community, especially in the youth development. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Larry. Sure.
I'm sorry, sir. You'll have to come up to the microphone. We need to hear you on TV, if you don't mind. Come on. Don't be shy. Come on up. You can do it.
Good. How are you?
My name is Desmond Haddon. I'm a resident of Millbrae, obviously. But I wasn't always. So I'm from this one.
That one's better.
There you go.
There you go.
So I'm from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, and I was just thinking to myself, like a program like this would have been huge when I was coming up, because, something like that would have just been, for me, growing up without a dad, that would have just been like a massive inspiration, sense of guidance, and of purpose. And beyond that, our interaction with law enforcement, unfortunately, it's less than ideal, and it's extraordinarily limited in scope. So that would have been 2 birds, 1 stone. And I'm wondering if that's something that you guys are looking to expand maybe across the country. If you can do it here, can you do it everywhere else?
Yeah.
Brooklyn's pretty far.
I know. It's a bit of a reach.
Just to speak a little bit about First Tee from a national perspective, it started 20 years ago. There's 150 chapters around the United States. It's reaching about 6 million kids a year. Our program impacts about 13,000 each year in San Francisco. The beauty of the Bay Area is when you have resources from people who care, coupled with high need in the community, and you have a well-structured program, that's when I would describe the magic happens. So, like I said, there really hasn't been First Tee presence on the peninsula till now, and we're headed this way to provide opportunity that you didn't have when you were a kid. And the final thing I'll leave with, 20 years it's First Tee started, and now we're able to look at the research of what the true impact of the program truly is. So we talked to alumni in high school, et cetera, and it's exceeded everybody's wildest expectations, not only from an athletic side, which is really the least important, but they're better students, and more importantly, they're better citizens, which is really the bottom line. So,
Absolutely. Thank you. Ms. Oliva.
I just want to say that thank you for your comment in the audience. And there's room to pay it forward, because I was with Larry and I witnessed how there's a lot of kids that want to carpool and do things together and need coaching. And he was with 15 or 16 of our Millbrae kids. And so if there's anybody that wanted to pay it forward and help out with I'm sure Larry would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, sir. Okay, yes, they have lots of programs, and we are very thankful for all those, particularly the soccer at lunch and all of those. So thank you so much. And now we move on. Agenda overview. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Pappen, Vice Mayor Lee, and members of the City Council. Tom Williams, Interim City Manager. I would just like to say what a pleasure it is to be on board with the City of Millbrae, so thank you. We do have a few staff announcements. The first comes from the Sheriff's Office. We'd like to bring to the public's attention of a financial scam that's working its way through the county and specifically the City of Millbrae. A resident of the city was recently a victim of this financial scam. The victim was contacted by phone and was enticed to wire money overseas in the amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars, actually. The suspect in this case is disguised themselves as a Chinese embassy and other Chinese law enforcement agencies. So the Sheriff's Office would like this public announcement to please understand, have the public understand, that anybody identifying themselves as law enforcement agency demanding money from you, they are not real. A legitimate governmental agency and law enforcement agency would never ask anyone to send money or purchase gifts. So if you do receive a phone call from a government agency demanding money from you, hang up and call the Sheriff's Office. Their numbers are available on their website. The Sheriff's Department will respond by sending someone to the residence to investigate the incidents. So do not give money, credit card, or any information over the phone to anybody is the message from the Sheriff's Office.
And I would just like to reiterate here, I work for the Attorney General's office. Everyone on our floor has been getting these calls. I think everybody up here, these calls are coming through in Chinese, and it says from the Chinese consulate. And just the enormous volume of these calls, please, if you know anyone who might be taken in by these calls, just get the word out. This is a total scam. And I cannot believe the number of people they're calling. It's outrageous. Multiple times, yes. Cell phones, to call the Attorney General's office. Everybody on our floor got it. So please, pass the word to everyone you know. This is a scam. Do not respond. Thank you so much for covering that. Mr. Williams.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Next, the President of Malta's visit. Thank you, everyone who came out and participated to welcome President Preka from Malta. She visited the city of Millbrae last Friday evening, and during her visit, she toured City Hall. She visited the Officer David Chikuti Memorial. And Millbrae, as you know, has a long and great relationship with the country of Malta through our Sister Cities program. With Mosta Malta, the namesake of Mosta Grove. The president came back on Sunday, had Mass at St. Dunstan's, and visited Mosta Grove. So it was just a wonderful ceremony, and thank you to everyone. Now, for everybody that doesn't play golf but loves to play tennis, Millbrae Recreation Ready, Set, Rally announcement from Rec. Drop in on Millbrae's Recreation Ready, Set, Rally classes. They are held every Friday at 5 p.m. at Central Park Tennis Courts. Participants will get hands-on lessons and learn how to play tennis from great coaches throughout the area. Those who already know how to play tennis can attend and learn new skills. The program is open to adults 18 and over, and it costs $3 a day. So the program is being provided in part by the United States Tennis Association's Northern California Division. And then lastly, the Central County Fire update. The Central County Fire started the process of hiring new firefighters and fire prevention specialists. Interviews will start this month. The men and women who graduate will be serving on the front lines in the city of Millbrae, town of Hillsborough, city of Burlingame. And not only do they respond to emergencies, they also ensure our fire risks are minimized and reduced through public education and outreach. We also want to congratulate our fire marshal, Rocky Abala, for being honored with a Fire Official of the Year Award for 2017 by the California Building Officials for his dedication and service to fire prevention and risk mitigation professionals. So congratulations to the fire marshal on that award. Also, April is Central County Fire responded to 170 service calls in the city of Millbrae. So with that, Mayor, there are no other staff announcements. We'd like to now move to the agenda review. Item number 3 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Item number 4 is the oral report from city committee and commission chairs, which there are no reports this evening. The next item is public communication, 3 minutes. Any member of the public can speak on items not on tonight's agenda. Moving to the consent calendar, item number 5 is to consider authorizing by motion a sponsorship in the amount of $10,000 for the Sheriff's Activity League, SAL, Food, Wine, and Heroes event and other things that they hold in the community. Item number 6, resolution accepting the 2017 street pavement repair project as complete and authorizing final notice of completion. Item number 7 is a resolution awarding a construction contract to Ranger Pipelines Incorporated for the sewer modernization program, the Hillcrest Substation Basin 3 Sanitary Sewer Capital Improvement Program project in the amount of $2,822,650. Also approving a professional services agreement to Park Engineering in the amount of $205,000 and authorizing the city manager or designee to execute the subject contracts and contract change orders up to the aggregate project contingency amount for a total of $420,000. Item number 8, approve a fee waiver request in the amount of $144, requested by Councilmember Ann Schneider for rental of the Chakotay Room on May 23rd, 2018. Now moving to public hearings, there's one public hearing this evening. That's item number 9. That is to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 2.20 of Title II of the Millbrae Municipal Code to update the purchasing system and provide bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. The next item, item number 10, new business. Receive a staff report and provide policy direction regarding short-term rental ordinances and enforcement. Item number 11, appointment to be considered by the City Selection Committee, the Local Agency Formation Commission. There's additional information on the dais for your review. And lastly, our council comments. And Mayor, that concludes the overview of tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Lee?
I'd like to request that item 10 be put in front of the public hearing after the consent calendar.
Seeing no objections?
No, not on consent.
No, after the consent, before public hearing. Before item 9.
Seeing no objections, I'd like to pull the minutes from February 13th, as many things were left out, and bring that back at another time. My apologies for not getting my additions to staff earlier. That was February 13th, which would leave us with 2 additional minutes approval, January 23rd and February 27th. Okay. Moving right along, we have one public comment. This is a time when members of the public can comment on items not on the agenda.
Are you going to take action on the other 2 minutes?
Oh, yes, well, we can do that first. Okay. We have a motion on the other 2 minute items. We do. Vice Mayor Lee, Councilmember Oliva, your votes, please.
The minutes for the January 23rd meeting and the February 27th meeting passed unanimously.
Great. Okay, moving on to oral comments. Again, a time for the public to comment for up to 3 minutes. There's a little light board up there, if you could please watch. Any items not on the agenda? And I have one public comment. Karen Kalanko? Did I? Oh, all right. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Kalanico, and I live at 301 Laurel Avenue. I wanted to make you aware of an emerging issue in our neighborhood and ask for your help. Verizon has submitted applications to install 12 new small cell sites in Millbrae and are expected to file 8 more applications. This is in addition to their existing sites. Please keep in mind that Verizon is just one of many service providers in our area. Due to the easement that runs adjacent to our properties, our neighborhood is particularly impacted by these proposed sites. Verizon has filed an application to install 1 cell site in our neighborhood, and the city map has an additional Verizon site proposed. We already have equipment from PG&E, including a transformer, several cable companies, and a T-Mobile cell tower on the easement. Last year, AT&T installed a large service box on the sidewalk adjacent to the proposed Verizon cell tower. If both Verizon sites are approved, we will have 3 cell towers within 100 yards of each other directly adjacent to several homes. Needless to say, the cumulative effect of this equipment, even before Verizon's proposals, is excessive in our neighborhood. Our neighbors are banding together to oppose the Verizon towers. However, Millbrae's cell policies and ordinance, written roughly 10 years ago, are inadequate to protect the residents and prevent the inevitable explosion of cell tower requested by multiple providers. Currently, the city has no cell master plan, and residents are essentially left to oppose the powerful cell companies on their own. We need the city's help. We need a modern, comprehensive cell policy and plan that addresses, among other things, their proximity to homes, schools, and the number of towers in a particular area. Without such policy and plan, Millbrae will soon be overrun by cell equipment. We also need a moratorium on the new cell construction until these policies and plans are completed. I am asking that this matter be placed on the council agenda as an information item in an upcoming meeting. We can debate the health risks, negative property value implications, and the related issues to these towers. I want to be clear. I am not against improving infrastructure and services. I do believe the city needs appropriate, responsible controls to protect citizens from unrestrained equipment sprawl, unnecessary intrusion, noise, and the ugly visual implications of the towers from multiple providers. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Lee, we really shouldn't be commenting on public comments.
Well, we can't comment, but we can make a request.
But I think it is a good idea to bring this before the council as a formal item as soon as possible. So
I'm not going to comment on what
Yes.
Brian said. I just have a question. Do we have a policy?
We do have an ordinance that governs cell, and there is a lot of state law that we will have to advise you about. As much as it may not be desirable, there is state law that protects the ability of these companies to install these facilities. So we'll bring this all back. So
I think bringing it all back and developing some sort of master plan would be a good idea. Okay, thank you. We'll be addressing it very soon. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. Greatly appreciate it. Okay, that's the end of the public comments, and we have consent calendar. There are items 5, 6, and 7, and 8. We have a motion by Mr. Holliber and a second by Ms. Oliva. Your votes, please.
All the items on the consent calendar passed unanimously.
Okay. We are moving item 10, receive a staff report and provide policy direction regarding short-term rental ordinances and enforcement. And we have several speaker slips on this item.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Tanya Ward, Community Development Director. We do have a presentation for you. So this item is on the agenda tonight in part because of public communication that was received at last council meeting. At that meeting, we heard about an Airbnb incident that occurred just days before the public hearing. And it was a negative incident that brought awareness to Airbnb or short-term rentals and boarding houses that have been occurring in Millbrae without permits. Since this item wasn't on the council's agenda, it was forwarded to tonight as a public hearing item. So let me move. There we go. So the city has joined with Airbnb representatives to aid in this conversation tonight and possibly answer questions that come up in tonight's discussion. Let's talk about what we know of current conditions. So currently short-term rentals is not a defined term that's in the city's municipal code. And boarding houses are currently not permitted in what we consider single-family or R1 or duplex zoning designations. However, they are permitted within multifamily and commercial zones with a conditional use permit, but those aren't the areas that we're hearing from the neighbors at that last meeting. In regards to, let me go back a little bit here, impacts. So I think we can all agree from either property owners or from housing platforms that there's a benefit, and that includes supplemental income. And it also allows for flexibility of earning income in those times when we all need it. The city can see benefit in adding transient occupancy taxes to those uses to provide code enforcement services and to adding funding to those priorities met by the city. However, we can also recognize that there's some negative impacts to these uses, and those impacts include effects to the character of our neighborhoods, includes noise, traffic, parking, and safety concerns. I think we all heard some testimony that was provided at last meeting that addressed all of those items. So tonight, staff's bringing forward some options. We've got 3 recommended options. And to briefly go over what those are, not word for word, they're up on the screen. But option 1 is to simply enforce all the violations per the municipal code. Number 2, enforce the violations on a complaint basis, which is what we currently do. But we need to identify that some of these violations may be addressed, but not necessarily all those uses that are managing themselves quietly and without impacts that we see currently. And option 3, looking at the potential of updating the regulations and permitting these uses, but considering the collection of fees that would be necessary to increase the revenue to police these activities and to ensure the safety. This is staff's recommendation, is item number 3. But in reference to all these 3 options, we acknowledge that these choices require additional code enforcement, whatever option we're looking at. And that in addition to that, we may need consultation from a consultant for aiding us in the discovery process, and then also working with our partners that we have here tonight, Airbnb, that may provide some insight to us on how these programs work with our neighboring communities. Staff is recommending at this time that we consider these recommendations and then hear from the public to see their concerns, and then providing policy direction to staff so that we could come back to you with a policy, maybe including an ordinance at a future date. So I'll leave it that with questions if you have any at this time.
It was a very busy week for all of us. I understand that. I was expecting a little more in terms of a staff report on this, and was looking for more coordination with the Sheriff's Department and legal counsel. I was hoping that we would have an ordinance before us tonight, but that's not happening. You weren't here, Joan. We did talk about it, okay? But legally speaking, since we do have legal counsel here, would you like to inform the public of our current ordinance? And we have, Well, let me do that then. Anyone who is operating one of these short-term rentals currently within the bounds of the city of Millbrae is required to get a business license at the very least, which is not happening. We are quite aware of that. But we do have something on the books right now that our current ordinance regarding the transit-oriented tax with the hotels do pay does apply also to any short-term rentals. And the discussion which we hope to open up tonight, we hope to expand on all of those aspects of this. I will say that Airbnb has been quite responsive, and they have a representative here tonight, which we hope to discuss further. They're assisting us in moving forward along these lines. We have several speaker slips. Does the council want to hear from the public, or?
I'd like to hear from the public first, and then we can all answer the questions or follow up.
JJ, do you want to wait till the end after hearing all that? Okay. Yes.
As an individual, I'd love some things on the record. And I'm not sure if that can, I'm happy to let the public go first, but having had a boarding house next to me, I want those problems on the record.
Go ahead. Let's start.
Starting with it. So, for the last 6 or 7 years, I've had a boarding house next to me. It's an absentee landlord. It has had drug dealing there. It's had someone who passed away there, and they left the body there for several weeks. There was no way to get notice. There was no way to find out what was going on. I did come to the city manager at that point. I was a council member once we found out why the coroner was there for 7 or 8 hours. And I am hopeful that the outcome of this is much stricter guidelines on, well, we say that boarding houses are illegal, but there was no avenue to correct the problem. It's still a boarding house to this day. It's not Airbnb, but I check a number of different rental places. I haven't figured out where they're getting their tenants, and it's not on any of the known rental places. So just looking at Airbnb and the others isn't enough. There are other pathways there. And my whole neighborhood was... We've dealt with the cars. We've dealt with everything you all have been talking about. And I think it's great that you came forward today, that we can work on this together. My only last thing as a council person is we're also, by state law, having to look at auxiliary dwelling units. And I want to make sure that the public understands that we're talking about different animals and that we keep auxiliary dwelling units, which go through a whole process of becoming legal and meeting codes, versus operations that are not happening legally. And I'm certainly not in, well, that's moving on to where I am. So good luck to you all.
What is your definition of boarding house, Ms. Schneider?
What I had heard over different code enforcement officers, they had carved the living room up into 3 different bedrooms. They'd carved bedrooms up into other bedrooms. They'd taken the garage and turned it into several bedrooms. This was a traditional Italian home. Originally, it had a downstairs kitchen, so they carved up that family area into more bedrooms. And you'd see a steady stream of people coming in and out with different cars, different suitcases, different backpacks.
Okay.
And just for the record, we did in January of 2016 vote to direct staff to begin collecting TOT tax from Airbnb and other short-term rental sites. And I believe, I don't know if, Joan, if you want to give an update on that. I don't know if there were, I think there were discussions with the rental companies, and we have been unable to reach that arrangement with them. But that is on the books. It is, by definition, these short-term rental sites are, the TOT tax does apply to them, by definition, if they're less than 30-day stays. So that's on the books. I think having an ordinance or something to more firmly state, both the tax issue and other regulations for these, I think would be helpful. But look forward to hearing the public comment first.
Sure, Joe. I think this is an incident reflective of life and society moving faster than our laws. And unfortunately, that happens all the time. We find ourselves living lifestyles in the fast track with technology and not having laws that kind of address the problems, the new problems that arise. So this is one that is ripe for attention, and we're happy to take this on. We did 2 years ago talk with Airbnb. We had negotiations with Airbnb. Airbnb initially wanted us to amend our ordinance to make it quite clearer than it is right now, that short-term rentals would apply to these new types of short-term rental enterprises. Because our hotel tax, again, has been on the books for decades, and the definitions in and of themselves reflect old language, old terminology. You know, we call a hotel operator, you know, any person or enterprise that rents, but really hotels were kind of the target of the TOT ordinance back in the day. And I do believe that our current language would also cover the Airbnbs, the short-term rental operations that have arisen in recent time. After our discussions with Airbnb, they were cut off for the reason that there was statewide legislation running in Sacramento being proposed, and Airbnb and other companies of its nature kind of preferred to see how a statewide regulatory scheme might end up. It turns out that there were no bills that came out of the legislature in 2016, 2017. And so here we are, back. Thank you, Mayor, for getting the attention of Airbnb. We will be working with them. I think they would like to have some kind of an agreement by which we can ensure knowing who is out there, who is have some kind of form of registration, do require business licenses. We have a fundamental conflict with our zoning regulations. I think there's some things we need to work out. Again, getting our municipal code to keep up with the pace and developments of life. But certainly we want to hear from you and hear from the citizens, their concerns, and find a means to put regulations in place that address them.
Well, as noted last time we spoke of this, our primary concern is public safety and always has been in this realm. What I'm disappointed about is that 2 weeks ago we heard about one of these boarding houses, or what's it called, with 35 beds in it, and our 60-some beds in it, and our code enforcement officer didn't make it out there to deal with this because that is not permitted under our current regulations. So I would like to make sure our new interim city manager that is dealt with not in another 2 weeks, but presently as soon as possible. We do have preliminary regulations and we need to enforce them. Airbnb has been responsive here, but as was noted by our other council members, there are a lot of other companies out there. And I understand, which is missing from this staff report, which I'm disappointed about, is that our staff has been dealing with a contractor and what's the name of this contractor? We have a current contract that is supposed to be looking at just this sort of thing. Could you enlighten us, Mr. Williams?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. What we have is a company, Muni Services, that does this type of transaction. We do have them under contract. We would have to rework that contract for them to come in and help assist on the collection. But yes, we do have somebody under contract and can move forward rapidly to make sure that we achieve the direction of the City Council and collection of the TOT.
Okay.
That's specifically for the TOT. It's not addressing any ordinances of...
No, I get that, but my frustration is we've been talking about this TOT stuff for a long period of time, and this contractor has been under contract, and we have no results. And that, to me, is just exceptionally frustrating.
Excuse me here for 1 second. The issue that we're speaking about, though, is based upon allowing Airbnb to even be in the city. Is that not correct? I mean,
no, they're allowed to be here right now.
I understand that, but I think that that's the consensus of the audience that is going to speak on public safety. It's not about the TOT. I don't think they're concerned with the TOT as much as, that's a separate issue.
No, actually it's not. It's all short-term rental, so it falls under the same purview. So anyway, we'll get on to.
It's not anyway, Mayor. Excuse me one second. TOT is one issue of this, but public safety is another issue of it. And I think that we brought this forward because of our constituents that were very upset last meeting over the safety and the gunshots that occurred on their street. The issue of TOT is a separate issue that could be taken up on it. I mean, that could be our staff's.
With all due respect, it's all related to short-term rentals.
Yeah, both subjects.
Both subjects.
Two subjects.
Same item.
Gotcha.
So we have about 10 speaker slips. And the final speaker will be the representative from Airbnb who's here. So hopefully we'll answer some of those. First one, Sammy Chuling, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and the member of the City Councils. My name is Sammy Chung. I live on Murchison, and we have heard quite a bit of story from Paul and Peter, who are very close to the events that happened. And I want to share my experience. Actually, my house is roughly, I measured on a Google map, is about 400 feet from the event. My family moved to Millbrae about 2.5 years ago. I think the major reason was we thought we moved into a safer city. So my family, including my wife and 2 kids, 2 boys, one is 6 years old, one is 3 years old. So 1:30 that night, I was very clear because I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, and then exactly what Paul described, 8 gunshot, very clear, because it's just right next door. And my first reaction was going to the bedroom because my 3-year-old kid is just sleep right next to the window. It's just a common sense that any bullet shoot up, shoot on the side, whatever, can get through the window or the wall. So luckily, of course, nothing happened. And unfortunately, later I heard, indeed, the bullets went through to the other houses. So few minutes later, I mean, luckily my house can have a good view on Murchison, and I could see quite a show. There are not hundreds of people, but at least tens of people, clearly not our neighbors, fleeing, and high-speed car taken away. And while the first thought I was is the only defense mechanism in my house is my kid baseball bat in the garage. I did go and get it, and of course I check around in the house if any holes or anything, because it's just so close to the incident. So, very luckily, I mean, I guess 5-10 minutes later, there's a lot of police car, very quiet, but I see the light flashing around, so I feel safer, but people still fleeing around. I don't know where they jump from. So that is sadly where the incidents and another angle away from what Paul and Peter described. So it's a very serious matter. It is not about ordinance. It's not about whether more tests. So it's about safety. So very luckily, we didn't have anybody lie on the ground this time. So we don't want to, it's not supposed to happen. So I would really like everyone on this case to be very serious about the proposal, whatever is going to be proposed to solve this problem. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the second part I want to share and ask is...
We're going to have to ask you to wrap up. We've got 10 speakers. See that red light there?
Oh, sure.
If you have a final comment, please go ahead.
My final comment is I would love to get some guidance. I know ordinance take time to approve and so on. So what happens the next weekend or the week after? So is 911 still the solution? Are we going to get saying that we cannot do anything about it? So I just need some friendly neighborhood guidance saying that when things happen again, what should we do? Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Brian on Elder. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members.
There you go. Thanks.
You want me to use this one or this?
That one's fine, sir.
Pardon?
That one, this one.
This one?
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
Okay, so I'm going to make mine relatively quick. I could be up here for quite some time, but so I just, the wife knows I'm quite, I can go on with this issue that we've had here. So I just jotted down some notes just while I'm here. So I'm Brian Piegler. We own 2 houses here in Millbrae. We live at 301 Elder.
The microphone, sir. We want to hear you.
We live at 301 Elder Avenue here in Millbrae, and have since 2004 in that particular house. Our neighbor at 311 Elder has decided, passed away. Most of the tenants and the residents on that block were elderly when we bought our homes. So unfortunately, some of them are passing away, and the house right next to us was bequeathed to a son that lives down in Los Angeles. I actually, being a good neighbor that I am, I helped them get this. I didn't even know what they were doing. I helped them get the big couch in there, a TV, took some items in my own garage when they weren't there to receive them, all types of stuff. But I've been a law enforcement officer for 28 years, enforcing and investigating criminal law at the state and federal level. My wife's the chief prosecutor in City and County of San Francisco. Our main issue that this problem for us started in September, and just like any other case, I talked to the owner who I've had a relationship with for quite some time, and I just documented and went about it like I would in any other investigation. We had to figure the thing out ourselves. We knew we were kind of in a gray area, and got to a point where both of us were like, there's nothing we can actually do. But it has been a 100% nightmare, even as we speak right now. I'm wondering, what am I going to go home to, right? Who's going to be there this time? I had some white supremacists a couple of weeks ago. On the week of 420, we had a whole house, street load of weed smokers. We don't smoke marijuana. Our 4-year-old daughter doesn't smoke marijuana. But we had contact high. I don't know if you know what that is, but we could smell it all through our house, right? So it was kind of warm on one of those nights, and we had the windows open. Serious. Contact high. I was mad. And you've already I missed this first meeting, but I will say that, briefly, I just broke down. What are the problems? Safety, right? Privacy, lack of proper vetting of the tenants, parking. Can't read my own writing on this one. Illegal and legal, which marijuana, drug use, late night parties, drunken screaming, yelling, all hours of the day and night. Active. Actually, one day it was in the backyard, and the people, we're part of the Airbnb quaint neighborhood. I'm in my back deck, and they're filming me and my dogs, right? So, as the captain or the chief can attest to, neighborhood disputes are the most volatile disputes that you could possibly have. A family dispute is the most volatile. I did not move to Millbrae to be in a volatile neighborhood dispute or a neighbor dispute, but I'm in one, right? And I really have come to what I've done.
I'm going to ask you to wrap up there.
I am going to wrap it up. What I've done here is come to the city of Millbrae to find out what happened. So I found out the guy doesn't have a business license. It started with you, ma'am, and that's where we found some relief. I quoted you. I got the newspaper article. I saw you on the news. Hey, you need a business license to operate in the city and county of Millbrae, right? I go down. He doesn't have a business license. So then I go over to code enforcement, fill out the application, do all that other stuff. Then I'm like, hey, what do I do now, right? Because it's almost Friday. They're going to have new tenants in there. So I don't want to bug the police department. I don't want to be that guy, but what do I do? And there was no answers. Hey, we're in a gray area. This is going to happen at a city council meeting, blah, blah, blah. So what I did was I said, all right, I'm going to call every time there's a new tenant in there. I know he's operating without a license. That's a crime. Yep. I'm going to call. I'm not going to ask him to write a police report. I'm going to ask him just to give me a CAD number, make a notation, and that's what I do every time a new tenant comes. But we would appreciate some help in this matter. We would appreciate some type of action on the code enforcement, and I would like to offer any assistance I might have. Hey, I'd be happy to help, but we need some help.
Thank you. I'd like city staff to note, too, this gentleman has clearly stated he has reported these, and yet the code enforcement officer is not responding. So I understand, but this can no longer go on. So we have the gentleman's address, and if he's reporting these things, and we appreciate that, sir, we hope to get beyond that this evening, and give some greater protection to our public. Janine Barrett.
Good evening, Mayor, Assistant Mayor, Council members. I'm back again, and I want to make it quick. I'm trying to get to all my points. I wrote everything down. I first want to resubmit complaints from my neighbors. These are about a year old, but I want to resubmit them again since some of my neighbors are not here. I was talking to another neighbor of Millbrae, and there are parking permits for the surrounding areas for the downtown shopping. And I don't see why we can't enforce those if we know that these Airbnbs have licenses, you have the addresses. Let's enforce parking permits or in surrounding areas of these Airbnbs so they cannot park on our block. That it seems pretty simple. My house is not an Airbnb, it's a boarding house. So, I mean, many things, I don't know how this property slipped through the cracks. It didn't meet the architectural regulations. It didn't meet the scale, the size, the garage space are not, it's living space, laundry space. It's not used for cars. There's also, she has a license, and I just went over the regulations. You can have a business license to operate if you live in the house. She does not live in the house, so she should not have a license. It needs to be revoked because she comes and puts the garbage out and she leaves, and that's not operating a business in this boarding house. I mean, the house was, as far as I know, is an R2, zoned as R2, but it's a monstrosity, and it's operating as a boarding house, and that's not legal. And you need a conditional permit to operate a boarding house, and it just has to. I sound like a broken record. I'm sure the city's tired of seeing me, and the building department's tired of seeing me. But I reported cars. Thank you for the abandonment. They came out right away, which I thank you. Tom Williams, thank you for calling me. I appreciate it. I appreciate your help with this because it needs to come to an end. I don't know what else to say.
No,
thank you for listening.
No, thank you for being here. We'll take those. Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker. Paul Larson. Nice to see you, Mr. Larson. Could you please watch the lights this time?
Mayor Pappen, Vice Mayor Wayne Lee, all of our illustrious city council members, it's always wonderful to see you. And also, it's wonderful to see everybody here. And I really sympathize and empathize with everything that you're having to go through. It shouldn't happen in Millbrae. Millbrae's not that kind of town. So I really, really enjoy hearing everything that you have to say. It's very important. Since I was here last time at our last city council meeting, I've been receiving phone calls, emails, texts, social media communications, and various other forms of verbal communication, people telling me stories about things that are happening because of Airbnbs and short-term rentals. Airbnb is just one company. There are dozens of companies that do the exact same thing. Well, I've really have learned a lot. People have told me literal horror stories. I know that there was mention of my incident up here, but 500 feet within that same territory on Madeira, another incident happened. Same exact thing, same exact people. And then also people telling me about other incidents that are very similar happening all around Millbrae. I know that Airbnb has said that these are rare occurrences on the news, etc., but they're not. So based on what I've learned, that other cities have done, I've written something for you to listen to. So I guess I'm representing the Millbrae residents who are experiencing hardships. So it's very, very troubling. So I'll be as quick as I can. Opening short-term rentals in Millbrae and residential neighborhoods is rude and unfair to the neighbors, abruptly creating problems such as scattered trash, strangers coming and going, obnoxious behavior by renters, trespassing, sudden lack of parking for homeowners, out-of-control parties, and in my case, all of the above, including gunfire, has degraded Millbrae neighborhoods into stressful environments and has put the affected neighbors into a state of distress. These are not isolated incidents. Short-term rentals need to be banned from residential neighborhoods, condos, and apartments through zoning and enforcement. Transparency from short-term rental companies is vital to show where these homes are located and the exact identity of who is renting there. The strongest limits, regulations, and restrictions need to be implemented and enforced in Millbrae to make it impractical to open short-term rentals in residential neighborhoods. Some of the most effective examples from cities across the world are: an owner must live and stay at all times in the house being rented alongside with any short-term renter.
Thank you, Mr. Larson.
Oh, I thought my time was up.
See that little red light there in front of you?
Oh, well, you have all of this.
No.
You have those. So please refer to them. It's very important. Anybody who would like to see these, please just let me know. And these are very, very workable and doable solutions. Thank you so much for listening.
Jim McCarthy.
I'm Jim McCarthy. I live at 1365 Madera Way, right down the street. Forget about down the street. His driveway is one house above me. I was not home that Saturday night. I was home Friday night. On Friday night, we witnessed 20, maybe a few more, in front of us looking at their phones looking for that address because 2 Lombardi Lane does not show up on the map. It was not the first night we saw this. We saw it a previous night. I have concerns for residential neighborhoods. I worry about this party culture that Airbnb engenders. It doesn't belong in the neighborhoods, any neighborhood. Parking becomes a problem. Someone did block my driveway. I didn't go out. I didn't dare. I didn't want to take the chance of hitting them or then some violent act happening. Enforcement. We were told the police really couldn't do anything. I think the laws need to change, obviously. That we need to enforce these. I think that they are connected. The laws in the books need to be enforced, and we need to have a way to make sure they're enforced. This costs the community of cleaning up afterwards. I mean, my front yard had all kinds of stuff in it. I'm sure somebody went by and picked some of it up, but not all of it got picked up. I saw my neighbors doing the same thing. The lack of housing we have in Millbrae, which we've talked about with the other TOD projects that I've been coming to, is this going to be a problem when we put these new apartments in and people, since they're so close to BART, can rent these places out, make lots of money, and not worry about it? I don't think this is covered in the books yet. I think it needs to be. Why would you want to sell a house if you can make $7,200 in 12 days, 4 weekends? Why would you want to do that? That's a lot of money. There was a report on the news just a couple of weeks ago of a landlord in San Francisco who had multiple properties making over $700,000 in 11 months doing this exact thing. We need not that. It doesn't belong in our neighborhoods. We need to enforce the laws in the books, but these people they were breaking all kinds of laws. We need to enforce it. So we need this so that the laws can be enforced, that the laws are there, and that Airbnb and such people are, in fact, paying for that enforcement, and we're not paying for it as citizens because we're not the ones causing the problem. It needs to be in the books so that we can recover those costs. That party, we should have been able to afterwards say, okay, Airbnb, not only fix the house, fix the neighborhood, and pay for the police presence. Thank you.
Leah Ginberg.
Good evening. My name is Leah Greenberg. I'm a house owner at Hazel Avenue, and I'm here also to talk about Airbnb. Unfortunately, we all heard about this very bad incident that happened some weeks ago, and I'm very sorry for all the hardship that the neighbors had to suffer with this. But I'm also hearing that these problems with parties or board house, etc., it didn't start with Airbnb. Maybe Airbnb is just showcasing a law enforcement problem that is underlying this incident and that we are seeing in our city. I agree that Airbnb is a fact. It's a part of our lives, not only in Millbrae, in all the cities, and it should be regulated. But I would like to invite everybody to be sensitive about how to regulate Airbnb. We have to also see the other side, the side of people that might have an extra room in their house and they live there, and they might decide to use Airbnb to make some extra income some weeks per year because either they are elderly that live alone but still want to live in the community, cannot pay for city taxes anymore despite living here for years. Or in my case, and I have 3 kids, I have an extra room that my parents use, but sometimes they are not here, and I might decide to have someone in my house of my choice a few weeks per year. I think it should be regulated, but I think it should not be forbidden 100% because of these bad incidents. Again, I think that our focus should be on law enforcement or how we pay for the police to be here. Airbnb is not the only problem with security. We all have, we know about the burglaries, we know about all the bikes that are stolen in the BART, and it has nothing to do with Airbnb. And so my point here is really let's regulate Airbnb, but also let's be sensitive of the people that might benefit from this without harming the community. And also, I think we should have more data. I mean, Airbnb is a platform that it's very transparent. The data is there. How many houses in this neighborhood have been rented? What is the percentage of problems we have? Certainly, there is a profile of the kind of rental that brings problem and those that don't bring problems. So I just would like to point, let's be sensitive to this. Thank you very much.
Donald Kung.
Mayor Pappen, Vice Mayor, Council members, thank you for allowing me to speak. I live in 16 Shamrock Court in Millbrae. I've been a resident of Millbrae for 40 years. And I just recently got onto the Airbnb platform. I had some extra rooms that I use for relatives and for guests. And then when it's not being used, I have the Airbnb available. And from my experience with Airbnb, I'm very proud of Millbrae. I grew up in the school systems here. I've been part of Millbrae all my life. And I feel like I'm an ambassador of Millbrae. The guests that do come, we screen very, very carefully. I have a 2-year-old and a 10-year-old in my house. I don't want a trouble of any kind. The shooting that I've heard, this is all new to me. And I think law enforcement needs to be involved. I absolutely agree with that. I think any taxes and regulations that we need to follow, we will follow. I agree with that as well. But as an ambassador of Millbrae, the guests that I have, some of them are foreigners. They're not familiar with the city, so we introduce them to the restaurants. We give them tours. We show them where the BART is, and we show them different destinations. And I think a lot of our guests are have a good review of Millbrae. They look at Millbrae and go, wow, this is a great city. You've got 24-hour stores. They didn't know Walgreens is open 24 hours or Safeway. So other countries don't have that. But they come here and they have a great impression of Millbrae. And my job, my duty as a 40-year resident is to give Millbrae a good image. And so the guests that come, I do care. I take a careful screening of them, and we don't allow smoking, don't allow partying. We're very strict about that. A lot of professionals and foreign guests come, and so we feel like, yes, law enforcement does need to take a stand. We support it. I support it. But at the same time, we feel like we're also helping other people. And sometimes a guest would come and they might have another friend that wants to stay with them. We don't charge them. There's no rent charged to the extra guests because we want to help that person get to know the city. And we have a real output of caring. So that's my personal view. Thank you.
Desmond Hayes? Yes.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, everyone else. I live here in Millbrae. I've been here for about 4 years. And back to my Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn story. Unfortunately, I lost 2 brothers to violent gun crime. So if anyone's sensitive to what gunshots means, it's definitely going to be me. Where I grew up, there were gunshots all the time, like every night. It's just normal in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And in Millbrae, the reason why so many of you guys are here is like how could this be real life? But for me, it was every day growing up. So I'm not trying to downplay anything that you guys experienced at all. But I'm a host. So part of what being a host means for me is that the safety of Millbrae, which is why I chose to stay here when I moved to San Francisco, isn't impacted by the fact that I have guests. So exactly what the gentleman said, I make sure everyone gets screened. I make sure that I don't do any auto book. You can't just click a button and you show up. I make sure that the people who come in are vetted. I'm not letting in just anyone. If you go to my house right now, I know for a fact it's going to be one of the quietest houses on the block. It's extraordinarily clean. All of my neighbors have my cell phone number. They can call me at any time if there's any issue at all, but I never get the call because I know who my guests are. I greet them in person. I make sure they know if you smoke marijuana, this isn't the house for you. This is not an alcohol house. The idea of like a party with gunshots, I'm like, the idea of the lights being on after midnight at my house, they already know that someone's going to hear from me about it immediately. So all of the houses that have Airbnb guests in them, we're not talking about, the situation that you had, which is horrendous. Like, I feel bad just hearing your story. We have situations where if you look at my house and you look at all my neighbors, there's no way to tell that this is an Airbnb house versus another house on the block. And I make sure of that. So I think when you look at ordinances that you guys need to make as the governing body of Millbrae, is to say, well, okay, if Airbnb is here and it's having a negative impact, do we whitewash all of Airbnb and say get rid of it? Or do we say there has to be a way to figure out, okay, this is an Airbnb house, it's causing a problem because it's an Airbnb house, and how do we address that? Instead of just damning the entire platform, because that might not be fair. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Tam, I think, Madeira.
Good evening. If it's okay with you, I'd like to give my time to Paul so he can finish his speech.
Not a habit where.
Thank you, Peter. Well, they felt that it was important that I finish. So continuing on, I left off, an owner must live and stay at all times in the house being rented alongside with any short-term renter. A short-term renter must stay at least 90 days per visit. A short-term owner is only allowed to rent up to 90 days per year. An owner can only short-term rent their primary residence. No second or other residence is allowed for short-term rentals within Millbrae. Single-family residential homes are not allowed to be divided into short-term ADUs, in-law units, cottages, etc., that will affect parking or density originally intended for that neighborhood's design. Along with a required business license, a short-term rental must have the required parking spaces, limit on number of beds, and number of people allowed at a time. Creation of short-term rental zones where short-term rentals fit in more appropriately and are less disruptive, such as along El Camino. In addition to a business license, create an annual fee, such as $500 for all short-term rentals per unit or bed, plus the current required transient tax for hotels. Create a position of a short-term rental enforcement officer who can investigate and find any illegal short-term rental activity, create a department for neighbors to report any suspected short-term rentals with avenues for timely recourse and consequences. A homeowner must be required to apply for additional insurance. Hefty fines such as $7,500 per incident for owners who advertise their short-term rental, which would be illegal, and mandating a letter from the host's homeowners association, if applicable, stating permission to have short-term rentals. Now, these are just a few of the most popular solutions in curbing short-term rental problems that are working well for other cities. I respectfully request that our Millbrae City Council take these items into serious consideration and implement them as immediately as possible. It is hoped that these enforcements will help curb the adverse problems that have arisen in association with short-term rentals and bring our neighborhoods back to a sense of normalcy, livability, and safety. Thank you. Thank you, Peter.
Janet Ho. Janet Ho.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah,
can you hear? Okay, my name is Janet. So I live in Millbrae for about 3 years. I moved from Sunset in San Francisco to here. So Sunset have a really horrible parking situations, and I chose to live in Millbrae because it's better parking in my neighborhood. So I think one of the problem here in the parking area, because here downtown, they have more apartment and shops, so they create this parking problem. But in my neighborhood, it's higher in the hills, and I don't have this kind of problem. So I don't think Airbnb is the only reason that caused the parking problems here in this neighborhood. So I listed my place. I have an extra room. I live by myself. So sometimes I find it's being lonely, being in the house, and I have an extra room. So I chose to have Airbnb and meet these all different type of people. Most of them are from out of state. They commute to work here just to Monday and Thursday because they have a better job here, all this tech company here, and it's just tough. The family is from out of state and they don't want to pay for high hotel costs to stay around here. So I think Airbnb is one of the platforms that can benefit for these people. They just want to commute to here for work. And I got the chance to meet all these people as well. So I really found this Airbnb platform to be really helpful, not only for the travelers and also myself, that I can meet people. So regarding to the incident that happened a few weeks ago, I know this is only a situation that no host was present. So I would, Paul also suggest that to modify the short-term rental with host presence at all time. I would agree to that suggestions. And so if the council were to ban the short-term rental here in the city of Millbrae, that would be really punitive and unfair to other people like me that can benefit from the Airbnb platform. So I request the council to reconsider any thought about placing a really strict restriction on this short-term rentals. This is all. Thank you. Thanks.
I want to thank everyone for their input tonight. It's very important. The next speaker is actually from Airbnb, and I think she will give us some insight here. First and foremost is that most of the rentals within Millbrae are hosted and rooms. So go ahead, introduce yourself. And
thank you,
I don't think
Mayor.
we're going to worry about the time frame here. She's going to have to do a lot of explaining.
Well, I'm happy to answer questions that you guys have as well, Mayor and Vice Mayor and council members and community members. My name is JJ Straight. My actual legal name is Jennifer, but I go by JJ Straight. I live in San Francisco. I do work for Airbnb, and just wanted to make a few points that I hope help clarify how seriously Airbnb also takes this particular incident and safety. Safety is the cornerstone of our community at Airbnb. Airbnb is a platform that is absolutely built on trust between hosts and guests, as you've heard from some of our wonderful Millbrae hosts here tonight. And we do know that the overwhelming majority of hosts and guests are good neighbors, but Airbnb, when any incident happens, we really take it absolutely seriously, and we work to make things right. There have been over 300 million guest arrivals and Airbnb listings to date, and these negative incidents are extremely rare. But as soon as we hear them, we make sure that we reach out and work proactively with the city, as we've done here in Millbrae, and law enforcement to make sure that we offer any assistance that we can to assist in both correcting the situation itself and, as you guys are discussing tonight, think through what are the most important things that we need to do for the continued safety of the community. So I just want to highlight a few things that we do currently do to prevent bad actors from ever accessing our platform in the first place. Each and every Airbnb reservation is scored ahead of time for risk. We have a real-time detection system that uses machine learning and predictive analysis to instantly evaluate hundreds of flags that can stop suspicious activity. So earlier tonight, you guys talked about a scam that's going on here, unfortunately, in your community. Those things happen online all the time, and we take them very seriously. So these are the kinds of things that we are working all the time and learning new ways and improved methods that we can use to ensure that our community is safe online and offline. We also do background checks at Airbnb. We screen all hosts and guests globally against regulatory terrorist, sanctions watch lists, and for our U.S. residents, we go farther and run background checks that look for prior felony convictions, bump up against sex offender registrations, and we also do screen for significant misdemeanors to try to prevent folks to prevent any sort of bad behavior as we can. So, we also, as I've said, take these incidents very seriously and want to continue supporting neighbors affected. And so additionally, we have a neighbor tool on our site, and people can go right on our site at airbnb.com/neighbors to share those specific concerns. So I've heard some folks tonight so that we can also then work with law enforcement or others on making sure that we're hearing those neighbor complaints and working on them. So as you stated, Millbrae is a unique community in the sense that it's very near an airport. You do have a lot of business travelers here, obviously, who are accessing short-term rentals as an alternative or as their preferred way to travel. And for us at Airbnb, I can't speak to every platform, but a majority, in fact, a serious majority of our hosts, a preponderance of them actually are on site and live in the home or are sharing a space. So they are there in person for their guests. So for us, keeping, like I said, this community safe is a number one priority. And we stand ready to continue to work with our hosts and the community here.
Sorry.
Of course.
It's not helpful if everybody can please listen to the speakers and interactions between the audience. That's really not appropriate at this time. So please go ahead.
So just to wrap it up, we absolutely want to continue to work with you on what is the best solution for here in Millbrae. And I'm happy to answer questions if you...
I think we do. So
okay.
Go right ahead. Ms. Schneider?
Just a couple of ones from what you said. So it's great to hear that you score reservations for risk. What was the risk reservation for the group that rented the house on Lombard?
They did not score. No risk came up for this particular group. So
okay.
In our particular screens.
And you said the majority of your hosts live on site, but you used an additional word, and it sounded like they may live in the mother-in-law unit with a house on site, or I didn't quite catch how you said that.
No, they're on-site hosts, meaning they share.
And what percentage of that are the places in Millbrae?
About 70%.
So 30% of the Airbnb hosts in Millbrae are not on-site.
Or are sharing a secondary resident or sharing unhosted.
Do you track complaints on on-site hosts versus not on-site hosts so that there's data there?
I don't know that we break the data that way, but we do track all the complaints.
Okay. And That's what I've got for now, just based on what you said initially. I know. The industry I work in, quite often the competitors enforce against each other. In your world, on all of your on-site platforms, I'm assuming some are probably American-based or U.S. or North American-based. Some might be foreign-based. Do you keep an eye on each other?
We don't enforce against each other, so to speak, but...
Do you know who your competitors are?
Yes.
Okay, because, for example, the house next door to me, I couldn't find on any of the ones that we know, and I looked.
I heard you say
and it's harder, given that we have a very cosmopolitan population.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you could assist us in finding some of these other platforms?
We can try. I can certainly give you guys a list of who we know of. I don't know if you've tried Craigslist. Unfortunately, sometimes people go there, and I think one of
but yes,
yeah,
I went to everyone I could find, and I marked them out for the Lower Highlands neighborhood. So I pretty much know everybody in Lower Highlands.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it's legal or that's putting their house up.
Right. So I think that there's a lot of different types of platforms, and I'm happy to go through the ones that I do know of, and if that's helpful to you.
Well, if not to me, to staff.
Of course. But I can't speak to how they regulate or any of that kind of thing, or the different, obviously, systems that they have in place in terms of their hosts and guests. So, of course.
And when there is a bad experience, so for example, what happened to the neighborhood in Mills Estates, did you offer any assistance in not cleanup for the house, that particular situation, but for the issues that they're dealing with? If they're dealing with post-traumatic stress because of the incident that happens, do you offer counseling? Do you offer medical reimbursements? Do you offer anything like that when there has been a bad situation?
We don't offer those things. We do offer assistance in any property damage under our $1 million host guarantee that extends beyond that.
But not the neighbors.
Nope, it also extends to the neighbors in terms of their property damage. And so if folks did experience property damage and they have not been in touch with us, I would like to get information from them tonight because absolutely we want to make sure that situation is mitigated.
Okay, thank you. That's all I've got.
My pleasure.
Okay. If you could stay close by, Jennifer, I think we...
Of course.
I think our police chief at this point, I do believe there was an issue with this. This is an ongoing investigation as far as this incident. And we had a conversation with JJ previously as to, I think there was some sort of false identification used in this rental. Is there any information on that?
Ma'am, the case is under investigation. It's a criminal investigation. I'm not going to divulge the names or anything of the people that are involved, but we are investigating that aspect of it.
Okay. And the council's going to discuss here, but as was mentioned earlier by some of the residents here, we are interested in some sort of a comprehensive ordinance that will cover not only law enforcement's responses, but ensuring the public safety here. So as was mentioned by one resident, we do have, if your burglar alarm goes off, there's a fee paid. We are looking at some sort of an ordinance that will also include the response here. Law enforcement at this point, there was a response that night, but they were not able to control the situation because we didn't understand that it was, or who was in charge of the residents. Could you explain for the residents that? Because they saw you respond, not you personally, but the sheriff's department, and why it couldn't be dealt with immediately?
Sure. Like the gentleman said, party calls and disturbance calls are a common thing. In this situation, we were called out. The deputies responded. The people were contained inside the house. They could not see any criminal activity going on, so therefore they could not enter the home. If they had observed any sort of criminal activity or underage drinking or anything like that, then it would raise that to the level where they would have probable cause to go in. Based on my investigation of what happened, they responded several times, tried to quell the situation. They were unable to. because the people were contained within inside of the home. And so
our goal here in working with, and again, Airbnb is only one of many, many companies that are operating throughout this region, is that if we can work with them and we know where these homes are, then law enforcement has a step up in contacting the owner and gaining access to the homes when something like that.
I would recommend is some sort of registration process. It will give an example of burglar alarms. When people have burglar alarms, they register, and they usually have a responsible person for that burglar alarm. When we go out, many times, 99% of the time, a burglar alarm is false. We respond out, there's no one there to turn off the alarm. So then we look, for a responsible person to come out and turn off the alarm or to make the house secure. So that would be a real benefit in this kind of situation. If there is a rental, if there's a responsible person that we could contact and take action.
Okay. Jennifer, did you want to? I think if we can, whatever ordinance, we come up with, share. If we have a registration and it's shared with law enforcement, that would assist at this one level.
Can we ask questions to the
chief,
please?
As we definitely want to work with you guys on what the best ordinance that addresses these safety issues. I look forward to doing that. And we definitely work and have worked proactively, as you know, with law enforcement on this particular incident.
Hey.
Go ahead. You had a question. Well, I just want to throw some ideas out real quick and for us to ponder. One thing is that bad elements came into Millbrae who had guns and willing to discharge it. So that's one issue that I think we need to address and know. These people carrying guns, the Airbnb, whatever, whoever it is, shouldn't belong in Millbrae, and we want to keep them out, right? So I know South City started for that reason, they have plate readers. That I know there's private issues, but they figure out a system where they can track people who come into the city who don't, who are known, have known priors or whatever, or stolen cars. That might be one system. The other thing is, am I right to assume that people can just use Craigslist and not be screened at all and rent the house out, and we would have no control over that? Right.
Mr. Lee, I think one thing.
You need to go up to the. It's the mayor. I don't know. The mayor let you do that.
We're gonna.
I'll be very brief. I think one concern that we should have is that excessive legislation and a hostile stance on a governmental level towards short-term rentals. I'm American, obviously. I list on Airbnb. My neighbors that do short-term rentals are Taiwanese and Chinese. They all speak fluent Mandarin, and the majority of their rentals aren't going to be on a platform that you guys can regulate. Just something to think about.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
We gotta. Okay.
Yes. So I'm just trying to frame the whole problem here we're trying to deal with. It's not a simple thing like let's ban Airbnb and that's going to solve everything, because it's not going to solve everything. So I just want everybody to be cognizant of this is a bigger issue. There's two issues. One, we got bad elements coming in Millbrae we don't want, and we are a very quiet town, everybody's very respectful and law-abiding. And to have these elements come in here, it's very shocking, it's not something that we expect. But it's not the citizens of Millbrae; it's people coming into Millbrae that's causing this. Airbnb, obviously, it sounds like these people knew how to use their system and circumvented the system.
What if they use the hotel?
Okay, come on.
Hang on.
I'm sorry.
Hang on.
We have to have some.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to, we're just trying to get the whole picture out here. Okay, I'm not making any decisions at this moment. I'm just saying that we have to solve the issue, and we have a housing crisis too. And there are people who rely on some of this income to make ends meet, because even at $100,000, you can't hardly survive here. Barely survive in Millbrae. $100,000, you can barely survive in Millbrae, and that's and there's a lot of people, And I like I said, our taxes are going up, and they will start to go up, and we're going to have people going to have to leave because of that. And that's not fair to them either. So they're trying to make ends meet, and they're being law-abiding, and they're screening their people. If I was having somebody in my house, I'd definitely screen because I have a kid in my house, and I don't want them thrashing my house. The other question is, why doesn't anybody ask for like a huge deposit? That would keep people from thrashing their houses, you know. It's just, does Airbnb help facilitate that? Like, you know, if somebody wants to rent my house for a weekend for a vacation home, do you like collect like a $20,000 escrow or something like that?
We don't do that, but we do work with hosts on the best ways to set the right prices, and then obviously have those other screens, and then we have the $1 million host guarantee on the back end to ensure that when incidents arise like this one, that they can be made whole.
Okay, but that doesn't help the neighborhood. That's the problem. So it doesn't help the neighborhood. I think that's the issue. So we want to try to prevent this. So I'm thinking, you know, to give people incentive to be good hosts, that if they knew that they were going to, or people who are renting it knew that they were going to lose $20,000 right off the bat for, you know, some incident, then they'd be a little bit more selective of who they invite and bring to the house. Okay. Anyway, I'm done for now.
Okay, Ms. Oliva, I think was next. Sorry.
Well, I think Councilmember Lee kind of hit the nail on the head with the element that was attracted to the party, because I have a question for the chief. Would it be any different to handle a long-term rental than the way you handled the short-term rental that same night? I mean, I'm almost thinking that the short-term, they're out of here, they're bad. But in my line of business, I'm like, we get people that we have to call the authorities on it, and it's like, oh, we know that house, and we have a year lease on these people. So I'm just curious to see if in fact you handled this situation any different than you would handle any house situation.
We would respond the same way. The cooperation level, you know, would normally be different. People have a vested interest in their neighborhood. If they're a long-term renter, if they're, you know, some party calls that we have are young people when the parents are gone. But in regards to that, there's always someone that has an interest in the property. In this situation, it seemed like it was just a weekend thing. There was no responsible person there or anyone that cared for us to make contact with and have an understanding with.
So I'm just trying to put this in perspective. When we rent a home through our agency, we have owner information. So when there is a situation of a fire or whatever the case is, they contact us to see who the owner is. So does Airbnb, if they were registered as an Airbnb house, they would be able to be contacted? Who's the owner of this house? Was that situation available to you?
There was a responsible person, or there was someone that the owner had looking out after the property that did come out, let the deputies inside when they did their investigation, yes.
And you had to wait for her arrival or his arrival?
Correct. I don't have that exact information.
I think she was a building manager of some sort, not an Airbnb employee.
No, that's what I'm getting. It's exactly the same scenario. So I'm thinking, you know, the element of people with guns in Millbrae driving around is disgusting to me more than, you know, thank God they were just there for the weekend and not for a month or a year lease. So.
Okay. Mr. Holliber was next.
You know, I think I echo some of Vice Mayor Lee's points. You know, there are a lot of law-abiding Airbnb hosts who, you know, are just doing it to supplement their income, who may have an extra space, and I don't think those people should be put out of business. I think one of the things that was mentioned last time was the boarding house that had, I think, 60 bunk beds in a 10-bedroom duplex. I think those folks should be put out of business. There should be some type of a limitation on occupancy. I don't know what the right numbers would be, 1-2 people per bedroom, something like that. but 6 bunk beds per bedroom should not be permitted in Millbrae. I think one request that I would have for our guest from Airbnb here tonight is, before, and first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Larson for bringing this to our attention and also for making several suggestions for possible regulations to look at. And a lot of these are good ideas. I think having a host present in the property would help to prevent some of these incidents from occurring. One thing we could start on tomorrow, is collection of TOT tax. If there's something you can do to get started on that right now, we do have it on the books. That will at least help pay for code enforcement, for law enforcement here in Millbrae, before we have a more comprehensive plan in place. So I'd like to ask for your assistance on that as soon as possible. Is that something you can assist with?
Yes, absolutely. We've been in communication with city staff and are looking into that, and already have a meeting on my schedule for 8:30 tomorrow to talk with our tax folks. I understand that we started and got sort of stuck, and we want to get restarted on that, and that's something that we can commit to getting to an end solution on. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
They're also going to be providing us with sample ordinances used by other cities, so that we're not starting from scratch here. And we will build on those to ensure that the police response is paid for, that the law enforcement also has a record of who is used on the different platforms, on all the platforms that we can cover, so that the Sheriff's Department is aware of what they're responding to and whom the person responsible is for the property, so that we don't have this similar situation where they don't have access right away, because that is a very deep concern for all of us. So they have agreed to help us in that realm moving forward. Ms. Schneider?
Okay. The overcrowding, my guess is in a hosted facility.
Your mic?
My understanding, in a hosted facility, you're probably not worried about overcrowding, at least from your platform. And I don't want to get the hosts in trouble, but the reality is we do have overcrowding. And even at a house, even at an Airbnb or any of the other platforms, if they're renting out a couple of rooms, or a family comes in and they've got a couple of cars in a neighborhood that already has not sufficient parking, it's still a parking problem. So to address the parking problem near any place where there's an Airbnb or other platform, we'd have to put in a permit process, which then costs the other residents to buy their permits. Or at least here in Millbrae, you get one permit for free and you've got to buy subsequent permits. So your experience in other communities that, like San Francisco, where parking is at a premium, how are you handling this input of cars on even a well-run hosted Airbnb?
Well, San Francisco does have permitted parking, and that wasn't a result of Airbnb. It's just, I think, been in a system in place
that is
for
citywide.
Years. That's citywide. I happen to live there, and yeah, almost every neighborhood has some sort of permitting system. Again, I want us to be a continued resource, and I think most cities do parking around restrictions around some sort of system like that. We, once those systems are in place, we absolutely work with our host to inform guests and make sure that we are complying with those city regulations. But we don't do anything around parking.
So if we had a process here in Millbrae and you've got a new host, do you automatically reach out to Millbrae and say, 400 blank street is now an Airbnb, and we're just letting you know there could be people new to the neighborhood?
No, but what we do is when hosts are signing up on our platform to become hosts, we do a lot of host education, including really informing them of all of the regulations in the city that they're expected to follow.
So in any places that you're operating, are your hosts required to go and knock on the door of the 5 neighbors on either side and across the street or in back? To let them know that you're going to have strangers coming into your neighborhood on a frequent basis?
No, not that I'm aware of. I'll double check, but I cover most of the Western United States of America, and we don't have that system.
Given that we are next to an airport, we do have a lot of people coming in, and it's one of the things, having lived next to this, never knowing who's there, never knowing can keep you up at night. So I would like the city to at least look at how we can address people that you don't know coming in and out of your neighborhood at all time. Now, it was my understanding in a lot of cities with Airbnb that they did limit the number of nights you can rent your property out. It's not 365.
Yeah, there's been different regulations depending on the city, and one of the regulations that cities have looked at has included certain amounts of night caps.
So, and I think the letter that Mr. Larson provided with a 90-day cap, well, you were 90 days in order, which actually is a slightly different form of short-term rental, but I thought more of them were like 30 days a year or 60 days a year.
No, the ones that I'm most familiar with, I should say, I don't know that for a fact of every single city. We're in 81 countries now, so there's lots of different regulations. But the cities I'm most familiar with, and a lot of the cities in California, LA for one, looked at a 120 night cap for home sharing, but they are making it a soft cap. So if you're a good host and you don't have incidences like this, you could apply for an extended permit, for instance, and host additional nights.
Or
and others have
on another platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Somebody already spoke to this, and we want to work with you and be proactive. I would say that one of the cautions that we always have, particularly around bans in particular, is that they're unenforceable in a lot of cases.
I'm not necessarily advocating a ban. I'm just saying that if you have a house, and we live on a hill, so almost everybody's house is looking into somebody else's backyard, and you're trying to have some kind of privacy in your own yard, and every weekend, even at 60 days, you've rented out your house most every weekend, the neighbors next door have no privacy. So for me, what I would be looking for, if we're going to allow these kinds of hosting in a residential community, is that the neighborhood gets noticed, that there are a set of rules and requirements that hosts have to deal with their neighbors. I'm very appreciative that one gentleman gives their neighbors their cell phone number, and I assumed that meant you were a host on site, but I couldn't quite tell on there. But I think, for me anyway, having had a person's body sit there for 2 weeks, I'm not happy with that. And none of my neighbors were either. Now, that again, that's not an Airbnb problem, but that is an example that I'd like to see how we can protect the privacy and the livability of the people living in these homes. And to me, we're just dealing with the Airbnb, the short-term rental, the really, truly short-term rental kind of stuff. I am concerned about absentee landlords. I'm an absentee landlord myself, but I have my phone number, like you. My phone number's with all my neighbors. If there's any problem I want to know, it's only in Mountain View, so I can get there in 40 minutes. But I worry about being an absentee landlord all the time. I have a responsibility to my neighborhood, and I don't know if there's any legal way we can enforce that kind of attitude. But landlords have a responsibility to the community. And that's what I want to see in an ordinance. The last thing, and I assume you try to stay away from that, is income tax, property tax, state income tax, all of those other taxes you could pay when you're running a business. I pay income tax, state and federal, on my rental property. I have no idea how these other units are done. But you're putting an extra stress on the roads, you're putting an extra stress on the community. There has to be something other than just TOT.
Yeah, I mean, we look at paying the TOT because that's how we're regulated. So
it took a little bit of a fight in San Francisco, but okay, we're getting beyond that. And you're just one of maybe the better of the platforms. As you said, there's a lot of platforms out there we may never be able to track.
Yes, I mean, that's correct. I think what I will say is that that hosts and the reputation of attracting guests, though, is a reputational thing. So I think that that's why we work really, really hard on it. And I'm not sure that those other platforms attract as many guests. But yes, there's always going to be an element, I would say, that may, particularly if there's overregulation, sometimes go to these other places to list. But that's why we want to work really proactively to make sure our great hosts who are absolutely comporting and any systems that we can continue to talk about and make sure that people understand, because again, trust is the foundation of a platform like ours.
And to staff them, when this comes back to us, I'd like to see what kind of research can be done for absentee landlords, not just for Airbnb, not just for boarding houses, but absentee homes that are sitting vacant also become a neighborhood problem. They can become a vandal problem. They can become a place for homeless. But more often what I'm hearing from people who have an empty house next to them or an absentee landlord, it could be someone who's passed away too, so it could be in that legal term when you're in probate, is that the plants are growing up and it becomes a fire danger, or there could be chemicals left on site. So I think entirely separate from this, I'd like to learn more about what we can do to make sure that our absentee landlords are good landlords, period. And then on the boarding house issue, which is not your issue, I'm in agreement. When I called first, the police weren't sure what to do. Code enforcement wasn't sure. When one owner sold the house, that's when code enforcement found how the house had been divided up. We knew it just by seeing what was coming in, but we didn't know it for sure because the windows are always covered. There's a bunch of little telltale signs that you can see, and I think as a separate ordinance, we've got to tighten up what's happening with boarding houses. And make them illegal. They're not in R1 neighborhoods. They're not in a duplex, period, gone. And we need a process for that, and it needs to happen. That's what I'd like to see. We need a process to enforce it, because I tried for years and years to try to enforce it, and it's hard.
Can I ask when the dead body was?
It was the day that we had the CERT practical, so it was a year ago. In March, it was raining. I came home, and all my neighbors were out in the street saying, "Ann, what's going on?" I called Marcia. She goes, "It's none of our business." It took me another week to track down the issue.
I just needed to know when it was.
No, I mean, it's not been an easy process to try to get relief.
Okay. I do have a question for you.
Of course, yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Schneider, were you finished?
Yeah, I'm done. Okay. For now.
We'd close the public comment here. So my colleague here has been bringing up some of the posts in Millbrae where it says up to 60 people can party. How does one stop that? I mean, who writes up this advertisement?
His name, if we want to.
Oh well, I don't know if we want to out somebody there, but
well, I think that's one of the questions. Do we want to?
Yeah, I mean, how does one control that? Okay, we do have responsible hosts here.
Yes.
But on the other extreme, which obviously happened in this case, if they're allowed to advertise for 60 people, and what was the other one? Live, work, and party was another advertisement?
Same one. But yeah.
So that's the same one?
Same one.
Okay.
So these are exact instances where this is why we set up the neighbor tool, and we do look for flags like that ourselves as well, because obviously those are ones that we don't want to have like 60 folks. But if folks do see those and they put them on the neighbor tool, we'll make sure to look into those. That is not the nature of Airbnb.
Right now, but and this, what staff has left out of the report too, and was mentioned by several people, is trash. So does a neighbor report this? I mean, who's going to come out and clean up this trash except the neighbors who are left there with the aftermath?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, again, we look into those incidents when we hear about them from neighbors, and if there's significant damage, we can take care of it under that host guarantee. Yeah, I mean, those are things
we got nothing really for garbage.
No, beyond just like we were talking about parking, just beyond making sure that we where you might have regulations around debris, that kind of thing, that we're really informing folks. And I will say that, and I see your hand, Vice Mayor, the preponderance of hosts that are good hosts also are very clear, as you've heard tonight, on what their expectations are, and the guests know that up front and are expected to follow those house rules. And if they don't, they're immediately, suspended from the, as this particular guest was, permanently removed from the platform.
So, on the...
Oh, sorry.
So we establish a regulation here. So if someone then goes on your platform to register as a host, then your requirements for Millbrae would state
yes,
no more than a car or whatever.
Yeah, we would make sure
you're
that
going to be responsible for the law enforcement. Everything's going to be spelled out on this platform.
Yeah, we have what's called a responsible hosting page, and as hosts register and put up their listings, we really make sure that it's very clear. We also make sure we have a 24/7 hotline, of course, and we make sure anytime there's regulation change that all of our agents that would take any information from that area are also aware of the regulations, so that we're helping to, educate hosts and folks who call if they have questions.
But your platform, in this tragic situation here that we just had, there was a building manager. Your platform doesn't notify law enforcement. I'm trying to figure out this 24/7 reporting thing that you've just mentioned here. What good is that to us as residents if somebody's got a big old party in our neighborhood?
Yeah, I mean, if folks had called or gone on our neighbor tool, we would have responded to them. And as soon as we did get word, we contacted the host, and they were already in communication with the guest. And so, and we offered to assist any way we could with the host.
What is that? Come on. Paul, yeah. Well, we're trying to solve the situation here, and these kind of comments are not helpful. We had somebody whose law enforcement is investigating. Now we have to take it to a level where we can be. You what?
They're traumatized.
Okay, I understand.
We were victims for over 48 hours.
I think there may be a legal action that you might want to pursue there, but this is not and I apologize, but this is not the arena for us to deal with that. Now, you're kind of late for the comments. Yeah. If you would like to submit something, we are going to be pursuing this at the next level, so we will take any comments you want to email or whatever. But we need to try to protect the public here and get something established where they are protected in such a way. So there are limits, I'm hearing, to what any of these platforms can do. Now, we as a city have to fill in the gaps so that our residents are protected and not traumatized in this way. So, first and foremost, for the city, we have a code enforcement officer, and I'm really annoyed that in 2 weeks nothing has happened to what's already been publicly described here. So whomever our code enforcement officer should be responding immediately tomorrow to these situations that have been brought forth. And I want to thank the public who are reporting these incidents. We do want to encourage that. But they have to know there's going to be a response and not a runaround. That's just not appropriate. So we have to take the first steps here to what we do have and build on those. Vice Mayor Lee.
I think we should get a report from the community development, because there are certain rules laws that you just can't walk into someone's house without permission. So could you explain to us what can they do? What is the extent legally they can do in entering a house and doing an investigation? I'm not trying to say we shouldn't do this. I just want to know, what are we doing and what can we do to give it the tools to make it happen?
Thank you. That's a good point that needs to be made. A code enforcement officer does not have the same police powers as the sheriffs. They see things in plain sight. So, for example, they can't enter into a person's home.
But if somebody's reported this, what can they do?
So they can report it. There's a form that's filled out where details are provided on the alleged activity that is a violation of the municipal code. That's then given to the code enforcement officer to visit the site to evaluate. That's usually from what they consider a public view, from a street, from a sidewalk. They're not able to trespass onto property without right of access, permission from the property owner. Sometimes these events take place on vacant property, or I think we mentioned absentee property owners. That requires administration. It requires outreach through the administrative process, which is writing letters, trying to contact the property owner. Sometimes that takes time. In order, let's say if it's in the backyard, they can't get access to the backyard. There's specific rules that are applying to code enforcement officers that don't apply to the police force and to the sheriff's office. So there are maybe extra steps that are considered because it's administrative. And I think that's what Councilmember Lee is saying, Vice Mayor, is that it's not the same. But once we can get that permission, then we can access. And what we sometimes find is that sometimes the alleged violation has been corrected, no longer in existence, and no longer is considered an active case, and that case is then closed. And then we sometimes repeat that process, but it's an administrative process. So it's a little bit different than the penal code or how the sheriff's office deals with it. We also work as partners with our sheriff's office because it's more than just one effort. It's working with our building official to look at health and safety. It's looking at working with sheriffs and code enforcement. Sometimes environmental health. Sometimes it could be an issue of an elderly person needing assistance. There's all different types of situations, but there's laws preventing us to access property without rights.
Yeah, I wouldn't want somebody just neighbor making a claim and then all of a sudden you can burst into my house. I don't want that either. But
at what?
I'm sorry. So, oh God, I lost myself. Go ahead. No, I'll think about it.
At what point does this nuisance become a public hazard? We do have what's it called? The partying. You can't. We do have a party ordinance. You can't be a loud party ordinance. We got something on the books here. At what point? I feel the frustration here that you report these things and nothing happens.
Let me ask. So, are you allowed to use evidence like online? If you see some house renting a place, 65 rooms or 65 spaces in one day, are you allowed to use that as evidence to get a subpoena or whatever to get in to a house to look?
Well, we would generally partner with our legal staff for advice on that matter. But yes, we can collect information if it's made available. Sometimes, if it's not visible on site, then we can do those extra steps. We can figure out what the issue is. But in this particular case, it's not. When I mean in short-term rentals, it's not just a one-prong approach. It's using all of the resources. It's using our partners at Airbnb. It's using the sheriffs. It's using what we have, the information that's available to us.
So what I'm getting to my colleagues is that we could require certain things that within the law that allows us to, like for instance, anybody who rents a place must provide us a list of, how many days or whatever.
We've been talking.
Well, yeah, or something. I mean, not particular names, but how many times they rented it out or whatever. That Airbnb or any other online service must provide, how many people are using it per day. That means you get an idea how much traffic's going into that place. For people are using like a hotel, right? There's other things we could do. We can require all Airbnbs to maybe require a certain deposit for if they're going to rent out the whole house with no host, that they must put on a huge deposit. So then they have incentive to be good, whatever. I don't know.
There's laws that prohibit all of this, everything that you're speaking about. I'm sorry to say, but we're trumped.
Well, I'm sorry. You're saying the law's against asking for a deposit?
You can only collect a security deposit up to a certain amount. There's HUD laws that allow for as many beds in a house as you want. Actually, contrary to what everybody's wishing for, you can't. There's a limit to how many you can't have. So if you have 1 bedroom or 2 bedrooms, you can't say only 1 person can live there. It's completely contrary to what we're speaking about here. And with regards to the housing, putting the restrictions on Airbnb, there's so many other platforms by which anybody else, so if we're going to restrict the ones that we have the restrictions in place, we're gonna detour the good people that are using. I don't even know that much about Airbnb, so this is not a commercial for them. But yet she got up here to speak, and she has the restrictions in place where I know for a fact so many other things don't have restrictions that we're going to detour people
I'm not addressing Airbnb. I'm addressing the whole industry.
Right, but what I'm saying is we're going to direct the traffic that's going in the right direction back to the wrong direction. Now, we have a horrific story here that we have traumatized people in our audience that we need to deal with. And it's not the job of us to put laws into place with it because we don't know the laws. Every law that I've heard that we want to put in place we're trumped by it. We need our law enforcement to have the ability to Airbnb and them to have, like Tanya just said, they have to work this as a team. Putting our restrictions on it is not going to get anywhere for these people. We're up here grandstanding like we know how to fix this issue. Okay, go ahead, Ruben.
Well, through the chair,
Mr. Holliver.
if we don't put those restrictions on the books, then there's nothing that code enforcement can do about these complaints.
What restrictions?
Restrictions are the same thing. Excuse me. We have the business license.
We have that
in
place.
To enforce that.
We have a noise.
Hold on.
Exactly. That's where
That's what
I
we're
agree.
trying to. Hold on.
I would agree with all of that, but we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to enforce.
Well, I think
that's part of the discussion.
Well, what you said about HUD restrictions, I don't think those apply to, short-term rental properties. Those are residences.
They're
correct?
owned. Joan, you want to chime in? They're owned by homeowners that own these things. But
if the homeowner is not present and they're renting it out to people for less than 30 days at a time, I don't think there's anything that can prevent us from restricting the number of beds that they put in each room. I don't think. I doubt that HUD allows them to. I doubt that HUD protects them to put 6 bunk beds in each room. I think at that point it's a boarding house.
Let's
in an R1 zone area, correct?
Can we hear from legal counsel?
Yeah, I would disagree.
What I'm hearing is we want to figure out a way to encourage responsible landlord behavior. Laws can only go so far, but it seems to me that we start with a registration program. I mean, you gain a lot of power through information. You want to know where these places are. We are, I think, allowed to have some kind of a registration program. Of course, people could go ahead and rent and not register, but I think we could try to come up with some kind of set of rules in an ordinance which would require registration, which would require a list, an active list in the sheriff's office, as to where short-term rentals occur in the city, which would require, through the registration process for the owner of the property, to give contact information and have available all the time someone who can be immediately contacted for authorization to enter, if need be. So we would have this kind of information on file and accessible, if and when issues arise. I mean, we can look into what other municipalities are doing, and I think what we want to direct the rules at the owners of property. We want responsible ownership, particularly if they are not on site. They are absentee landlords. And I'm sure that there are registration and information requirements that we could put in place, and know who the owner is, know who require a local property manager or agent to be accessible if the owner of the property is not. There are things we can look at.
There is a vacancy ordinance. If you have a vacant property, you are supposed to register it with the county. Those ordinances exist. It's about getting them in place.
Well, and what are the consequences for not abiding by the ordinances? I mean, how do we...
So a municipal code violation is an infraction, and if you repeat you're in violations, it can be a misdemeanor. And at that point, you could be prosecuted by the district attorney. I mean...
Isn't there nuisance violations too? I mean, when I worked for the air district... Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Isn't there a nuisance? I mean, we just started off at $1,000 for the first nuisance. I mean, that's for noise, smell, anything that causes repose.
Yeah. Well, the bails, the penalties, the payments in this county are controlled really by the courts, and there is a bail schedule that's pretty uniform for cities throughout the county. Usually, the first infraction I think is $250. The second infraction is $500. I mean, these are not significant amounts. I think the Bay Area Air District may have had separate authority.
Okay, Madam Mayor, may I suggest that we, start at least giving the framework to staff of what we're looking for, and then let them, as the experts, come back with something. But I definitely want something to address the issue of bad elements coming into Millbrae. That's the other thing we're not talking about. We're just going after the host, and sometimes they have no control, and sometimes they just, no matter what they do.
I really don't know. I mean,
well, that's why I'd like the license.
We'll have to look into that, or have the sheriff.
I know it's a separate issue, but that's part of the issue.
Yeah,
Ms. Schneider.
So I'm curious. Let's say I'm a host or an absentee host, doesn't really matter, and I sign up for Airbnb, and then I get some bad reviews. I myself get some bad reviews. So I switch over to VRBO, and I do that for a month, and I get some bad reviews. And then I switch over to HomeAway. So the neighbors are now dealing with a host that has been a bad performer. How do we track that? So it seems to me that if there can there be an ordinance that says, for the ones that we know of, that when a new customer comes on board, a new host comes on board, they come back and notify us. So it's a two-way street. We're at least collecting that data. And then you can see this 400 blank street is registered at Airbnb, at VRBO, and HomeAway. Great. We can try to monitor that. So let's say this host gets a number of complaints. Then what happens? Do we have any ability to shut down a bad host? So I'm not talking about the good hosts out there. I'm talking about the bad hosts. What mechanism do we have?
If I may, I would say that's what the ordinance that we're going to prepare will bring back. It will bring back enforcement measures that if that happens and continues to happen, that they would be in violation of this new ordinance that would be adopted, and we would have enforceability. Even though we do have zoning code violations right now that need to be enforced, this would add a specific and greater level of enforcement and specific.
Perhaps we could require they would be removed from the registration list. If there were a series of. Let's work with it.
That's a beginning. That's a beginning for stuff like that.
Right.
So what happens when the organization that is doing the platform is a foreign platform and we don't know who they are? And let's be realistic. We have a large fluctuating population in California. So the likelihood of platforms from South America or Asia or Europe or Russia could be out there. How would we track that? How would we get in touch with those platforms to say that you're registering hosts that are not good to our community? What do we do then?
I don't know how we control the many platforms that may come into being. What we have to do is control the property owners who live here. And I keep coming back, that's how we control. We want to have information as to who is engaged in short-term rental of their property. Who cares how many platforms? We want to know who they are, and so we can track and monitor. So that's our hook.
Okay.
Our hook isn't every new enterprise that may come online.
But so
in the next month, there's no way.
Can I give you a for example then? So I'm sitting at home, and there's this thing happening next door, and I'm trying to find them, and I don't find them on Airbnb. I don't find them in all of these places. I don't know where else to go. So the best thing I can do is try to call code enforcement. So that could be a mechanism that we can start to track it. But what if I have a sense that something's wrong, but I can't quite figure it out, and I'm not sitting at my front window watching the suitcases come in and out? How do we help neighbors figure out if they've got an illegal operation happening, like we did when they started saying, these are the things that you can tell if a storefront has now become a house of prostitution? And I'm not saying that hosts are adding prostitution. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that there are certain behaviors you can look at that can help you understand. When I started seeing backpacks go in and 5 minutes later, empty backpacks come out as full backpacks, I had an idea something was going on.
I come back to knowledge. Knowledge gives us power. We know who owns that property. That is a matter of public record, and that is the person that we need to be dealing with, not the people who are coming in and out with backpacks. So let's work on something. But it's the property owners, it's the citizens, it's the people who have a connection with this community, not the people who don't. Is, I think, the way in which we try to control this. Give us a little time to try to figure out what other cities who've had maybe more experiences than we have done to address this. And I know there's got to be ordinances out there, and bring something back to you.
So just to finish then, because the staff report, and it's my understanding we have a code enforcement officer for 3 days a week, and they're responsible for the entire city and everything that code enforcement has to do. And there is a recommendation that if we're going this way, we need to make a full-time, or back to the days when we used to have at least one residential and one commercial code enforcement officer. We're coming into the budget period. Is staff concurrently going to make a recommendation for additional staffing?
Yes, we will come back with an ordinance, and obviously there's some revenue sources to be cost recoverable. As an example, just some quick math, as I understand it, there's approximately 200 units, and the average is 100 nights per unit. You calculate an average night at $500 per room or per unit. TOT tax of 12%, that's $1.2 million in revenue a year. I think that we will come back to you with an ordinance that provides what we need to actually enforce it, because I do believe that some of the frustration conversation is tonight, we don't have the tools, we don't have the resources yet to go out and really enforce what we need to enforce. And, listening to the council, I clearly understand what you're looking for. I understand the timing. I understand the need, and we will bring something back to you that's enforceable, that is sound fiscal impact, that provides us with the tools and resources to actually really get the job done.
I'm going to give you a summary before I go to the vice mayor here. We're getting some sample ordinances here. We are keying in on registration of all short-term, enforcement of the business licenses, payment for any law enforcement or public safety response, as we do with your alarm going off by accident. Clear enforcement measures. So if our residents are taking the time to report this, we have to have some reaction so that they can be protected. And if that may be an ongoing developing way to do things, if this gentleman has reported several times, then staff needs to bring that to us. We have to find a solution so that time is of the essence for every person in this room, and they need some sort of response. So if our responses are not happening, that's a big problem. And if we don't have a legal way to ensure the safety or whatever here, we need to then expand on what we're talking about. We need to start with what's already on the books, that's the TOT, collecting that. So these are, and if possible, limitations on Mr. 60 people party house here that's currently occupancy limitations. Thank you very much. Occupancy limitations. Where's that party tonight? But these are just the beginning here, and I look forward to seeing what sample ordinances we get from other cities but we want action. I thought we'd have an ordinance tonight, but Joan, you weren't here last week, so we thought we'd get some, and it's just a matter of making some phone calls and getting some from other people to at least give us a start. So,
yeah, but with that, Mayor, I do have a question, if I may. So we plan to bring you an ordinance using what we research and know what has worked in other municipalities. Right. So we're not going to bring back ordinances. Do you like this one? Do you like that one? We're going to bring back an ordinance that we're going to recommend.
Yeah, we want a proposal.
Based on tonight's comments. And
I also like to address the issue of people throwing their, it's trash or whatever, and then if the city has to clean it up or something, that we can charge back or something, because obviously the neighbor shouldn't have to clean up after somebody's party. And the other thing too is, even though it's a different ordinance and different discussion we have to have, I really want to look at license plate readers and tracking the bad elements coming into Millbrae. Because that's actually what happened. It's not the host that shot the gun. It's the people who went at the party shot the gun.
Are there suggestions for an ordinance? I don't think that we can. I'm not sure. The question was that, yes, sex offenders are required to register, and there's a map issued as to where they are located. So the question was, could we do that with Airbnbs?
Well, I believe if we have a registration program, that would be a public record.
So it could possibly be done. There's your answer. That's online already for Airbnb, if they happen to be with Airbnb, and that's another thing we'd have to determine. The benefit to this would be that law enforcement would then know and have more ability to respond within the residence as is. Question to the council. Cities like Sacramento, if you have any rental property, you are required to register them, period. So if you have a secondary property and it's rented, you charge, like, they think they charge a $16 fee per year, which is supposed to be so someone inspects the property or something like that. I don't know if it ever gets done. But somehow they keep a registration then of just simple rental property. This is not short term. But do we want to go down that path as well?
No.
From the realtor. Anyone else?
So this would be just to have, what would be the purpose of this?
Well, they say it's for, I'll look it up and bring it back to you.
Yeah,
but I have to pay $16 a year, yeah.
Mayor, I think in those situations that allows for annual safety reviews for fire code and building code for rentals, and that's one of the reasons why they're registered. Mm-hmm. And so fire departments, fire marshal will go in and actually inspect rental units for compliance.
And it's a very easy list to get to non-owner occupied property. It's a couple of buttons. So what's the point? So we'll know who they are.
Well, it could be a problem that, I don't know. I'm just mentioning it.
Through Madam Mayor, through the business license process, there could be an annual inspection connected with that, because that's already taking place for commercial businesses.
Yes, would you like to add something to the list here?
Mountain View they were trying to get more business license revenue. So they wanted to get any home-based business. It got really huge and a little bit ugly on there. They don't think they followed through because they haven't.
Trying to refer to a business.
Well, but it's the business licensing of those of us who rent houses, but it picked up a lot of other business spaces and working at home when your employer allows you to work at home. So it's just something if you want to look into, just be aware that Mountain View went through quite a bit of legal problems when they tried to implement that.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to go down the business aspect of that, but
I'll
bring something back if the council wants to get down there. And the realtor says no again. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, if it's only $16 a year, the revenue from that would be pretty minimal. So I think for it to be
I'm not
worthwhile,
looking for that. We'll see what the purpose is and
Okay.
see if the council wants to suggest something like that along those lines. I'm looking for other aspects of an ordinance that people would be. Now, I will mention one thing here too. We can contract for a company we're already in contract with right now, which tracks all these different platforms. So it would not be up to city staff. This is a contract that the company we contract with knows about or currently seeks out all the different platforms and all the registrations, so we would know who's operating within our city and if they are, in fact, abiding by a stronger ordinance than we have now. So I think we definitely, I don't think we have staff to do that, so we would be looking for some company to help us with that. Because it's...
Excuse me.
Yes.
Do they work with a certain amount of these? They work with Craigslist?
I think they get a percentage of whatever revenue they collect. Is that the basis of it?
I think that's it. So, and I think we would talk to them because, yes, we would be interested in Craigslist. We would be interested in anybody who's doing that within our city boundaries.
And that would be part of the $1.2 million revenue stream?
Well, that would go to pay for that cost. So it would be, trying to be cost recoverable. So, yeah, I don't think it would be that much money.
I think it's not the cost here, it's the public safety. I want the sheriff's department to know where these residents are.
But to pay for that added.
You went from TOT to safety. So if we're talking TOT, it makes all the sense in the world.
It's the same issue, though. If it's a short-term rental, then the TOT applies. So if it's a short-term rental on Craigslist, the most important thing for all these short-term rentals is that we get them registered. Secondarily, we collect the TOT on these.
I think the TOT is collected with the company that for all of those that are registered, right?
Correct.
So through the chair,
it's just man hours to get the database from all of these
service.
companies and research it and give us the database.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the company is able to do with Craigslist. My guess is it's very difficult to collect because a lot of those are either cash transactions or through PayPal or some type of service like that. Whereas with Airbnb or VRBO, there is a payment mechanism on the website, and that would be the place to have the TOT collection.
Well, that's something that, quite frankly, we're going to have to think about in an ordinance. That do we then bill when we know what is happening? Then we might have to look at just billing directly and not relying on a company like Airbnb. So maybe a combination of things.
Well, Airbnb is willing to work with us. We're hoping these other companies, when they're identified. Hello.
If I may. Deanna Hillbrands, Deputy City Manager. So working with a company like Muni Services, who's not currently under that type of contract, they don't work through the platform. They notify the owners or the hosts that their TOT is due, their business license is due, and they collect in that way. So their process involves discovery, and then and typically once they've discovered them, it gets turned over to the city for future revenue collection. So the city becomes aware of them, and they don't do ongoing collection because now the city's aware and can collect independently.
Good to know. All right, we got the preliminary points. If anybody has additional points to add to the ordinance. Ms. Schneider?
How do you draw the line between neighbors who just don't like the idea that there's one of these in their neighborhoods to valid complaints? Can you set up the ordinance that said these are unacceptable behaviors, and based on this, the public can complain? But then the gentleman just walked off, the one who lives on Elder, so he lives a block away from me, and he says every weekend there's a fresh crop of people and a fresh crop of problems to have to deal with. How does having all that we've talked about let him enjoy his home and make sure that his 3-year-old is safe? What have we done so far with what we've talked about to fix that problem?
I envision the ordinance that we bring back has a series of nuisance elements to it. And so if it's a recurring nuisance violation of that property owner, then we would be able to then revoke their permit.
Or business.
And they would no longer be able to operate as a short-term rental.
Take them off the registration list.
Correct. And if they continue, then that goes into more of a
Would the ordinance go
misdemeanor.
into, my apologies, sorry, it's getting late. Would the ordinance go into just how many times you could have complaints registered and how specific the complaints? It's not, oh, I hate them. It's this and this and this happened.
Yeah, there would be a qualitative list of nuisance complaints and also a frequency within a certain amount of days, weeks, months.
So type, frequency, duration?
Yeah, that's how I envision an ordinance being prepared to bring back that would be enforceable.
Okay.
We'll have to look at it. People sometimes make complaint and there's no there there.
Right.
So it can't just be the number of complaints. I mean, we have to balance everyone's rights, and we will look at this.
Yeah,
Let us see what's out there. I mean, I keep thinking that we're not the first city to have a problem. And I am assuming that we can gain from other experiences and hopefully build a system that will help us track, monitor, and regulate this behavior.
Yeah, that's a good point. Not number of complaints, but number of violations.
That's right.
Yeah.
So the last thing, the one problem that I see with Airbnb units is it is shifting potential ADUs, which could be permanent housing, or the last time I heard from the county assessor, we have 8,500 homes in Millbrae, and 500 of them are not housing people on a long-term basis. So how do we stop becoming basically one big city of hotels and back to a residential community? And that's probably a greater discussion, but it's a valid thing, and I've brought that up with our assembly member that if you've got 500 out of 8,500 homes sitting vacant, what's going on with them? And that's a lot of families who can't live in a house or apartment. It's any kind of home.
Through the chair, are those vacancies or are they rented out?
These are
short-term
apparently
rentals?
vacancies.
Or a combination of both?
So, I asked the same thing. They're vacancies, and I would assume that Councilwoman Oliva knows exactly. There's always going to be a certain percentage of housing stock that's vacant at any one time, even in a tight market. So 3%, 4%. This is 500 out of 8,500. That's a big number.
Okay.
I've got an ad that keeps popping up on my phone for host compliance that does this.
Oh.
The television can't pick you up.
He's asking about host compliance on his phone.
It pops up because I've been researching this issue, it pops up on my game program. Does anybody
Okay.
have any information on that program? Host compliance. It's a company that actually apparently does this. I have no idea if they're any good.
Well, we'll be looking into that. That's on the list. Absolutely. Yes, sir. Yep. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to see some action on this. Not a year from now. We've been waiting a while on some of this stuff. So I know we're going to get some information from the representative here tonight. We look forward to receiving that and hopefully moving on as quickly as possible and getting something on the books that will assist.
Thank you, Mayor. As the representative from Airbnb mentioned, we're going to be meeting tomorrow morning. We're going to get city attorney involved, move forward with collection of the TOT, as well as quickly as possible bring back an ordinance. And I will keep you informed as to what the timeline of bringing that back, but it will be our priority.
Thank you. And Mr. Larson has given us several aspects that we look at, and anyone in the visiting audience or watching on TV, yes, if you have anything additional you'd like to add, please email us. Yes.
I just wanted to correct the record to Vice Mayor Lees. We do have the ability to do a deposit, and I can share the information. It's up to the host, but they can actually ask for a security deposit. So apologies that I
don't think you could require specific homes in Millbrae to have that, but The security thing may be along those lines.
Ordinance could require it.
Okay. Well, for the police response, we may wish that.
So is it a TOT just for Airbnb, or would TOT be for all platforms?
We're all platforms. All.
For short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Mayor Pappen, one thing I just wanted for the record, look at the city of Santa Monica.
Okay, so Santa Monica has an ordinance. Okay.
Las Vegas, etc.
Okay, Santa Monica and Las Vegas, please. Okay.
There are many.
Yes, there are many.
Tiburon.
Okay. Time to move on, I think. All right. Thank you. The Warriors won. That's the best news we've had.
Does that mean that the series?
Yes. Moving back to item 9, public hearing ordinance, amending chapter 2.2, title 2. Hello, Ms.
No.
Hildebrandt, how are you? What do you got for us?
We don't need a motion.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. We are here to hold a public hearing for an ordinance amending Chapter 2.20 of Title 2 of the Millbrae Municipal Code. And this is related to an update of the purchasing system, to update the purchasing system and providing bidding procedures under the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act, or UCA. So during the last year, staff has spent quite a bit of time evaluating our purchasing policies as a result of a prior audit. In addition, this was also related to the council goal to develop infrastructure process, budget, and plan. And through these processes, we are looking for identify opportunities to streamline processes and complete public projects in a timely and efficient manner while complying with state law and remaining transparent. The Uniform Cost Accounting Act, or UCA, is identified as a mechanism to meet all of these goals. This act expedites contracting for small public projects, reduces the number of formal bids, and reduces the administrative time relative to advertising and filing of reports for public projects. The main thing that happens is that instead of advertising each unique small project, which is projects actually up to $175,000, which may not sound small, but in the context of citywide public works, that's a relatively small project. Instead of bidding each project over $5,000 as is required today, a bidder list can be created, or a list of qualified contractors can be created. And from the qualified contractors for a specific type of project, a more informal bidding process can be used, allowing more contracts to be completed more efficiently, saving on advertising costs and staff time. This was the primary goal of this ordinance update. However, in working with city attorney, I think it was 20 years, Joan, since we've looked at it.
I wrote it. I wrote the other many years ago in the 1990s.
She's just going to say many years.
Yeah, many years ago.
When she was 16.
Far away.
So we did do some other cleanup language. We clarified some responsibilities of the departments and the purchasing agent, which is identified to be the city manager, but then can be further delegated subject to the policy put in place at the staff level. We added some language regarding non-competitive or sole source procurements and revenue-generating contracts. We clarified some contracting procedures for non-professional services and equipment. And we repealed a prior resolution regarding approval of contract change orders and included language from that resolution into the proposed new ordinance so that it's comprehensive. Again, there's no direct fiscal impact of changing this purchasing ordinance, but we do expect some indirect savings in staff and management time and advertising costs. And again, just some ability to more quickly implement smaller projects for the city and get things done.
As far as this list of approved providers, how does one get on the list, and how do we keep frequent flyers, as we call them in the legal realm, off the list?
So there are...
Frequent flyer, I'm sorry, let me explain, is someone who constantly gets sued for their work, which we don't want to be involved in.
So there are in the Act some directions as to how the list is created, which includes advertising to create the list in the first place. And basically, there's not a specified time during which a contractor could come onto the list. So we would advertise as we open the list in the first place, as we become subject to the uniform cost accounting. We would notify through advertising in the local paper and through several construction journals. And then periodically we would re-advertise in those journals or as projects come up. I would defer to City Attorney in terms of how we keep particular bidders off the list, because in the case of public bids, typically the requirement is if they meet the minimum bid requirements and they're the lowest bid, and this is work of public improvement, which is again a defined term. We have to go with the lowest bid.
No, we do not. We can go with something that says you're the lowest bid, but you don't. You can.
Yeah, it's
most responsible.
Responsible bidder. You're right, Mayor, but the deputy city manager is also right that it's very, very different. It's a very high bar to find a contractor non-responsible, and you do have to go through a due process. But it's a process that we can do. We can, when we get bids and we look at the low monetary bidder, we follow up with references and we find information that concerns us. We are able to partake in a process if we feel that there is sufficient evidence there that is a warning sign. But you can't just say, oh, we don't like this contractor and move on. The low bid standard is very strong, going way, way back, but there is a responsibility element, and we can look at that.
We need to insist on this responsibility aspect.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In my experience, too, it's not just legal. It's if we check their references and they're consistently over budget and items like that, that we can deem them not responsible.
If we go through a due process, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Vice Mayor leaves first.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Ms. Hilbrand, can you give us an estimate, ballpark, maybe a span? How much does it cost for staff to do evaluation, advertising, and write up the the qualifications and evaluate per contract? How much does it cost approximately?
I'll have.
I'm not looking for a specific number. I'm looking for a range.
Regardless of whichever procedure we go with, we're going to have to write bid documents. The difference right now is under the current state law, any project over $5,000, we have to put a notice to bidders in the newspaper. And that typically costs us somewhere in the range of $1,500. So it's a little silly. Sometimes we have projects about $15,000. We have to put an advertising in the newspaper for $1,500. So with the uniform cost accounting, we could potentially do any projects up to $175,000 on an informal bid, not having to go out to the newspaper and publish a notice to bidders.
But you still have to do the staff time. So can you tell me about how much it's going to cost in staff time? Or even hours, if you have a number of hours?
It all depends on the complexity of the project. A typical project management, you're looking at quite a lot of time. We have to review a bid document prepared by consultants. We have to understand the project, and we have to do the biddings ourselves. You're looking at perhaps maybe up to a week or so, 40 hours for one of the larger, more complex projects.
So, I mean, it could easily cost $10,000 just to do a $5,000 contract, right?
Definitely, yes.
I would also add that there is also the lead time, and when you're posting a public notice, so you're adding another week or 10 days in the front of the project. So while, for example, a project may not be an emergency, but it needs to get done quickly. So you're kind of looking at a minimum of a month just for these extra requirements. So being able to just do a shorter bid process, electronic as well. So these things can be done electronically is another opportunity for savings.
Ms. Schneider.
So this is just for contracting out for public works type projects, because there were a bunch of things I'm used to seeing in purchasing contracts, like local purchasing requirements and green purchasing requirements, no labor law, U.S.-based manufacturing, but probably the one that's specific to this is it a local contractor or is it an out-of-state contractor? So are you providing local jobs or regional or faraway jobs? Is that handled under the bid point system? How do you cover those things like making sure we've got prevailing wage or living wage?
The prevailing wage is a state law, and we must have prevailing wages for any public works contract. There's no question about that. We don't generally mandate prevailing wages in a consultant in a professional service. I don't think there are prevailing wage rate schedules around for professionals. So I think where prevailing wages apply is to trades and union jobs and public works. For that, we definitely are required by state law, always have been, to require the bidders to comply with prevailing wage rates.
So this, if we're doing sewer repair and we're putting in metal pipes, for example, are they American-made? Are they foreign-made? Are there points given? Do we even ask the contractors where they're getting their materials? If we're going to do a contract for solar panels, are they going to be American-made solar panels or foreign-made solar panels? Can we ask for that?
So legally, I suppose.
John, I can potentially answer some of that.
Okay, go.
A lot of these contracts, it depends on the funding sources. For example, for federally funded project, we have the Buy American provision, and we have certain type on-the-job type of training, apprentice type of requirement. But on local projects such as those Baykeeper sewer modernization program project, we don't have the local policy about local hirings or Buy American provisions or even DBE. But of course, those are our council direction, council policy. Some cities have those policies, but in Millbrae, we do not for local projects.
Okay, it just seems that it was 20, 30 years ago that in my world we worked on green purchasing things, and I'm not seeing it here. And on top of that, as the Pacific Rim is accepting fewer and fewer of our materials, we're going to have to be working on U.S.-based manufacturing, much more so, in which case what we purchase helps that process going along. So I'm only one person. It didn't make it to our goals. I didn't even put it on our goals, but there's a new set of laws coming back to make sure that we've got recycled content product coming back. Most of those laws were from the 80s and early 90s, but it's going to have to come back because China has tightened up the markets, as they should have. They were getting a lot of garbage over there, and they're teaching us that they better send them quality materials. Short run, we better be producing quality materials.
So as an administrative policy, we do have environmentally preferable products policy. We do have, I can't think of quite the title.
It just doesn't necessarily kick in to the contractor level with what they might be purchasing. That's my only concern. So I'm just letting you know, I would like to make sure that we've got as much recycled content or reused content in anything that we are purchasing or anything our contractors are purchasing.
Mr. Holliber.
So as you've explained, I think a lot of what's in this does make sense and is beneficial. There is one suggested change that I would recommend that I'm a little bit uncomfortable with, and that is, in all due respect to our acting city manager, I think this is a policy that is should be agnostic to who's in that position, and that's the 20% change order authority to the city manager. Since some of our contracts are into the millions of dollars, this could potentially be, a 7-figure or more change order that doesn't come back to the council, and I would like to have that taken out of the ordinance.
You don't want any percent at all?
I mean...
Whoa. You want every change order to come?
No, I mean, I think up to a
or maybe a 10%?
Well, the thing is...
That's very common. I mean, 10 to 20%.
Well, that's above the contingency, right? So typically when we have a public works project, we budget in about 15% contingency. And then beyond that, this would be a pretty large... These could be pretty large change orders that are done without coming back to council and without going through a public process.
Yeah, I talked to the council member earlier and understand the provision. It's on page 8 of the draft ordinance, section 2.20.090, and it's the last two sentences. And so this is an administrative 20%. We're calling it contingency, but it's above and beyond the adopted budget for the project. And the adopted budget would include the typical contingencies, of somewhere between 15 and 18%. So basically, this is authorization to add 20% to the adopted budget. And I'm in agreement with the council member on this, that we're calling it contingency, but it's not necessarily the project contingency. It's adding 20% to the budget.
So what's been the typical staff practice anyway is to add that contingency at the time the contract is first requested. So I think it would be of no impact to go ahead and remove those two sentences. We would continue the staff practice where you'll see a contract. I think there's one in here in your agenda tonight that you'll see that we've requested a contract. We requested, for example, in construction engineering, and then a contingency fund. So we can continue that practice where you're adopting the contingency with the contract, and it would make these two sentences not necessary. Those were incorporated, and that was if you look at the very back, there's a resolution that's been rescinded, and that's where that language came from. So we're happy to just remove those two sentences and bring this back for second reading, if that's comfortable.
The 20% authorization.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the $50,000 or even bumping that up a little bit in lieu of the 20%, but my main concern was over the 20%.
So would you like to keep?
You might as well just take out the sentences rather than just leave an amount. I mean, $50,000 on a major contract.
It's not much, no.
Not even worth the print. I don't know. Just take out those sentences?
Yeah, this is kind of unusual anyway, so I would just eliminate. My recommendation would be to remove those last two sentences.
The last three, or the last three, starting with any change order not exceeding.
Correct, that's three, my apologies.
And then the total contract budget shall, we'll take out two sentences, but there's a sentence here we can keep in. The total contract budget shall equal the sum of the amount of the contract originally awarded and the amount of any council authorized contract contingencies, right? And then we'll take out
Yeah, you could certainly leave in the last
any change order
sentence.
that seeks, yeah. So we take out one sentence, I think.
Joan, you're not coming through on the mic.
So we would take out, as you mentioned, any change order
Yeah.
not exceeding $50,000, and then the following sentence after that. The total contract budget shall equal the sum of the amount of the contract originally. We just take those two out.
Okay.
Okay. If the council's in agreement with that.
That next sentence is a problem because what we do want to build in is a practice of a contract contingency. So anyway, maybe we could word it a little better. But I think what we're saying is we don't want to double dip. We don't want to build in a contract contingency approved by council and
then allow
of that,
another
20%.
Correct.
But I think we want to make clear that there will be a council authorized contingency so that you can have some flexibility.
And we do that.
Project, right? So let's work on that sentence.
So as working on, we have a motion in a second.
As amended, right? You're going to introduce as amended.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Item number 9, passed unanimously. Is your mic on, Elena?
It's on now. Item number 9 passed unanimously.
Moving on to item 11. Appointments.
Michael Neal, right?
Michael Neal.
I like Michael Neal. I moved. Oh, there you go. Can you clear the board, please? Do we need to vote, or can we just do a voice? Consensus? Can we do it by consensus? Can we do it by consensus? I'm really good with Michael Neal.
Any objections to consensus? Who will be attending the meeting?
What? You're not going?
No, I'm giving a scholarship.
Oh, I think, what day is, I think,
18th.
I think I was planning on going. Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going. Yeah, I've been watching, yeah. Yep.
Here's the proxy then, Vice Mayor. All right.
You can be.
Better go. I just checked the box. All right. Okay. I think you have to take. Here's your permission slip for the teacher. Yeah, comments, council comments. Mr. Lee?
So at the Peninsula Clean Energy, they're starting a $450,000 program to incentivize programs for cleaner energy. It could be electric cars, whatever, but they haven't really hashed it out yet, but it's called a community program to try to make a incentivize program, unique programs. Maybe not even unique, so we'll see how that goes. What else is there? Can that come back to me? I think that kind of caught me off guard.
Mr. Oliver?
Okay, I attended the Caltrain and High Speed Rail Local Policymakers Group. One thing of note, since the last time when Mr. Trapusis, formerly from High Speed Rail, no longer with them, was here, he had said that the draft EIR for the Peninsula Corridor would be done, was expected in 2019. That is now 2021 or 2022. So that's been postponed again another 2 to 3 years. So as we talk about TOD1 and other potential TODs in that area, I think it's clear that we should not be waiting anxiously for that EIR to be dropping in our hands any moment now. Let's see. I think that's all that I have for tonight. Thank you.
I attended an event at Burlingame Library talking about maximizing 101 traffic. They had a well-known consultant that comes and speaks. They're a transportation company in the city, talks about the new ways of looking at parking. And it would be something that could be, at goal setting, we talked a little bit about how to help the public understand what might be happening around the TODs, and maybe having this group come in and talk about parking could be helpful. Their main emphasis was how to get more people onto any roadway, including 101, and of course you do that by using a bus as opposed to an empty vehicle. So on top of that, I wanted to give a thank you to the Mills High School AP Environmental Science teacher, because she sent all the students there to get their hours for AP Environmental Science. So we have a number of students in Millbrae learning about transportation issues. They'll be attending 2 additional events coming up, learning about government and the environment on that. And that is, other than we need to schedule a bike sharing meeting, I talked to a couple of I talked to the Park and Rec bicycle group and to our interim city manager about scheduling a meeting about all things bicycle. And I think we were looking for the second week in June, given everybody has graduations and things going on. And finally, to the public, if you are curious why I have asked for, and the mayor has assisted me in having a public meeting on May 23rd, that is to gather anyone in the city, but specifically in the Highlands and the Meadow Glen neighborhoods, which is Anita, Helen Drive, Richmond Drive, to get together and talk about traffic and parking issues in our area and what might be some of the solutions to bring forward when it will come forward in the active transportation plan. So to see if any of us, if we as a community can get together and talk about what's happening in our neighborhoods in terms of traffic, what we think might help relieve some of the problems that we're having, and how to get recommendations to council. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for the okay and having a meeting with the public. The 23rd of May, I think that's a Thursday, and it will be at the Chet Cootie Room at 7 o'clock. Look for it in next door. Thank you.
Ms. Oliva.
So obviously I've been a little bit busy at SAL board, helping out with their little golf such and their fundraiser, and I think everybody got something that they can, if they wanted to make their own little donation towards the event, that would be greatly appreciated. Hart also is having their fundraiser that's coming up, and I was looking up the date. I couldn't find it, but I think it's the 23rd as well, for their fundraiser at the brewery in San Carlos. Also, I want to thank Councilmember Lee with all of the staff that helped out with the president of Malta. I thought that You made our city show off very nicely with our customs and our young population. I was very impressed by that. And other than that, I think I'll pass.
Okay.
Yeah, so thank you. I appreciate that, but it's
Vice
really
Mayor Lee,
staff.
did you have something else?
Yeah, it was staff. It was staff actually who made it all possible, with the flowers and cleaning up the front and providing all the extra stuff. It was very last minute, in my opinion. So thank you very much, Lena, Angela, Wenyi. And also, the president greeted. I want to thank the Model UN students who came. The president of Malta, President Aprika, she was very impressed with them, and she enjoyed spending time with them. I thought that was a. When other students, we like to encourage students to get more involved with civic activities, and I thought that was a good example. The Economic Vitality Committee met, and they're working on some work plans on downtown and looking at all the economic possibilities for the city as well. There were there were a lot of discussions about parking, but that's and then the CMEC, was it? Called the Committee on Traffic Congestion Management and Environmental Quality Committee of CCAG, which is the Cities and Counties of Association Governments subcommittee. They recommended funding a lifeline transportation projects and funding shuttle projects. And also CCAG, I believe, is looking at a petition against the repeal of SB 1, which is the Senate Bill 1, which passed about a year ago, last year, trying to fund, which raised the gas tax to help pay for infrastructure, roadway infrastructure improvements. Thank you.
And which Millbrae has benefited from greatly, as many other cities. So most of the cities and jurisdictions are against the repeal of SB 1. Again, congratulations to the entire city on receiving the President of Malta. The Mills Lion Dancers, Miss San Mateo, Teen San Mateo, who's also from Millbrae. Quentin J. from Bacchus Wine Shop did an outstanding job for a little wine reception there as well. We had all of 45 minutes. And our Maltese community that showed up, Sister Cities, on Sunday at the park, Munster Grove, yes, excuse me. And the clock we gave as a gift. We received a gift as well, which will be here in City Hall. We also had a goal-setting session this weekend. Thank you to staff and the council who participated. We hope to get all the requested goals and all the finalized goals up on the website so you can see. Working with staff was very enlightening to see what we need to work on, what we have in our budget, and what we're actually able to do. So we're going to try to get through all of that. The community center rebuild is meeting almost weekly. Group 4 will be having more workshops. We had a joint workshop with the Park and Recreation Committee. New design element is being added. Ms. Schneider suggested a more traditional aspect, so please go online, look at all the different designs, and give us your opinions on what you feel would be appropriate as we move ahead to hopefully rebuilding a community center we can all be proud of. And we're looking at all different aspects of this design primarily right now, but we are also looking at financing and seeing how we can actually get to the end goal of rebuilding a community center, which is currently valued at between $25 and $33 million, part of which is already, we have insurance money and some other developer fees and things like that. So we're trying to really bring down the cost overall from that figure so that we can get somewhere in that realm. And we will hopefully be, again, updating the council on a regular basis Because of the Brown Act, we can't all meet on that one, but everybody's interested, so we want to keep going along those lines. In addition to, we have CCAG is having their retreat coming up this week. Remind everybody you got your sample ballots in the mail, and there is at least one local measure you've seen many signs for, Measure N, so you can check that out. They have a website, and you probably had mail received today along those lines. Also, statewide races. This is a pretty thick booklet. Everything is mail. You can drop off at certain locations, so please, even if you're not a registered voter by mail, you're still going to get one. The postage is prepaid. The postage is prepaid. That's the good thing. You can just mark it and put it in the mail or drop it off at specific locations you can see on the website. As a last note, the cycle of life we're usually reporting in memory of, but Millbrae has a new resident, Eleanor Phoebe Hahn, little girl. So glad to announce a birth for once. Congratulations to her parents, and we wish everyone well, safe
Mayor,
travels.
There's one more item. So I need for the council to appoint me as the successor agency oversight board member to replace the former city manager, Marsha Raines, and there's a meeting coming up soon before the next meeting.
Put it on the agenda. We can't rule on it now. We'll have to put it on the agenda, I guess, because you're asking for a vote, right?
No, just an appointment. I researched that. I thought the same thing, but they said it can just be an appointment.
I just think the mayor can write a letter.
Okay, draft a letter. Does anybody have any objections?
All right.
Seeing no objections, just draft a letter and I shall sign it. Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Adjourned at 10:37.